if left to to be alone, I am so naturally selfish that being in a relationship with him has kind of like pushed me to be aware of all the ways that I'm jacked up.
You're listening to Find the Good News, episode 59, The Right Roundtable, a special 1-year anniversary mixtape episode featuring returning Good Newsies, Tony Bork, Diana Billette, Bruce Plauché, Amanda Yellett, and Carrie Hankins. Find the Good News is produced by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. See what else we do at parkerbrandup.com. Welcome back to Find the Good News. It's been 1 year since this show launched, and circumstances have lined up just right so I can bring you this special mixtape episode. If this is your first episode, then make sure to look up the past episodes of each guest that I visit with today. For my new listeners, thank you for putting good news in your podcast lineup. For those returning for more good news, thank you for turning your ear towards this good news podcast week after week. On Thursday, October 3rd, we'll be going live once again. My co-host for this live show is Tom Trahan of the Brimstone Museum. We get to visit with Patrick Bennett of the Lake Charles Film Festival. If indie films are your jam, then I promise this live episode will be a blast. This is super important. If you want to chat live during the show, make sure to get the Mixlr app for your smartphone before the show. You'll be able to listen and chat with other listeners when we go live. That's Mixlr.com. Mixlr.com. The Livewire Challenge with Lightning Round with Patrick is going to be a blast, so stick around to play along. I also need to tell you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/FindTheGood.News. Every early riser patron that supports Find the Good News gets access to a super secret podcast called The B-Sides. It's a sneaky peek into the conversations and planning that goes on with the Parker Brand Creative Services crew that helps me produce Find the Good News. If you like behind the scenes content, then become an early riser patron at patreon.com/FindTheGood.News. That's patreon.com/FindTheGood.News. Okay, it's time to load up that old Viewmaster with images of Tony, Diana, Bruce, Amanda, and Carrie. Put on your favorite pair of headphones. Enjoy the feedback buzz as you snap in the jack. Turn the dial until the levels are just right. Take a breath. Check your pulse. Make a clean runway for those good newsies to land in your heart. Then press play on a little good news. A little over a year ago, I came back from a personal retreat and sat down with my creative crew to tell them about something I wanted to do. After reflecting on the state of my mind, my work, and the actual tangible good I was or was not doing through my trade, I had decided that I wanted to change the rules we'd been operating by and create a signal all our own, a channel, a stream that was focused on finding and sharing the good. In short, I wanted to stand around this wide umbrella of goodness and take a hard 360-degree look at the community I lived in and invite others to join me under this canopy to share their stories of good works in all their varieties and colors. More than that, I wanted to feel the sacred hearts that were beating behind these good works, and hopefully, through deep listening, curiosity, intimacy, and conversation, I would get to hear the stories, thoughts, fears, hopes, dreams, inspirations, successes, and struggles that shaped these good people to do the good works they were doing. The show would be a podcast produced by the Parker Brand Creative Services team, leaning heavily on our 20 years of experience in marketing, communications, and design. The original name I'd come up with was Find the Good. As luck would have it, the name was taken and so was the domain, but we happened upon the domain FindTheGood.News. Find the Good News was created. We created some fun graphics to play with, outlined our format, and started inviting good people on the show. And they came. Then, more people showed up. Before long, I was doing exactly what the introduction to the show stated. I was visiting with artists, educators, business owners, civic and spiritual leaders, and everyday citizens that were working to bring hope and happiness to their corners of the world. Find the Good News expanded into road trips, mixtape roundtables, and live episodes. Listenership has grown, and with each conversation, my understanding, awareness, and happiness has grown as well. Producing Find the Good News has touched me on every dimension.
I've laughed and cried with guests, and each one has left me to think deeply on our talk long after the microphones have powered down. After a full year of Find the Good News, what I know as truth is this: good news doesn't wear one face. Good news looks like all of the people that have shared their hearts and minds at the right round table, and those that are yet to come. This show doesn't happen without each and every one of these good newsies taking their time to do their good work and then talk about it with me. I'm humbled by each one of them. They are my teachers, and I'm so glad to have each of them in my personal history. To you, the listeners, I say thank you for putting your ears on each week and tuning your dial to this show. There's a lot of news in the world, and you are choosing to find the good.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you want to rewind, snip out the best parts, then put them all together. With Find the Good News mixtapes, that's exactly what I get to do by putting good people doing good works together at the same table. On this show, I've visited with individuals who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. Now, we're getting back together to expand on our original conversations. These guests have returned to share even more of their good news with me and to open their hearts and minds to each other. We have elevated discourse about the things going on in our lives, revealing our critical life experiences, perspectives, and the fundamental beliefs that have anchored each to a path of goodness. Every good newsie has a story. Each has good news to share. My name is Oran Parker. I'm mixing and matching my wonderful guests, and we're going to find the good together.
And I love you just as well.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming back. It's been 1 year. Really.
It's weird.
I know. It flew by. I remember when I started it, I thought, this is going to be tough. Am I going to be able to find 10 people to talk to, much less a whole year, week after week? Because I thought, I'll tell people it's going to come out every week. But if I can't do that, I'll switch it to every 2 weeks, and then maybe it'll become a once a month thing, and I'll be really chasing folks. But what happened was it just sort of, these feedback loop started happening. People started going, oh, hey, I know somebody, or I know somebody else. And then the guests would know people, and they would listen to another person's episode, and it would just sort of stimulate some, I guess it just got into all the cracks, you know. Everybody's like, well, I know somebody. I mean, everybody here has probably recommended somebody.
Lots of good people.
Yeah, really, really awesome. So just before we get started, so people know the voices, I'd like to go around the table and everybody just kind of introduce themselves really briefly so they can hear your voice, and just tell them who you are and what you do.
You're looking at me first.
Yeah, to my left.
I'm Carrie Hankins. I am a nurse practitioner, and a couple of years ago with Kristen Cassidy and Susan Couch started Truth, Facts, and Lies, which is an education program for middle school and high school kids. And we started the Southwest Louisiana Youth Foundation, a nonprofit, so we could put the program in schools at no charge to the kids. And we talk about human trafficking and dating and relationship abuse and sexual harassment and pornography addiction. And one day my kids are going to be so embarrassed.
My name is Amanda Yellett. On the internet, I am Charlie Sue. And I am a man, but I am a lady.
That was a part of our conversation. I kept you at arm's length for a long time. Yep. I was like, I don't know if this is a real account or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of creepy.
So on all of the internet, you are a man named Charlie Sue.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like I know that.
You probably do. I used to be Amanda, and then they made me change my name.
I refuse to think of her as Amanda now.
She's just, Charlie Sue.
Okay.
The end. Okay, I'm Diana Vallette. The short story is that I grew up in unbelief. I was not a believer, and about 6 years ago I had a really radical conversion that changed my life. And when I came down from that conversion, things were messy and confusing. They weren't all fixed like I thought they would be. I searched for somewhere to turn to when that happened. I didn't have anywhere, so I became that place. I just became really honest about
my life, and I blog about it. The end.
I'm Tony Bork. I founded the Water's Edge Gathering. I speak to a lot of people on Sunday, and we feed a lot of homeless people during the week.
I'm Bruce Plochet. I am a licensed professional counselor. I have a private practice at New Horizons Counseling Center, and then I also do case management at the Institute for Neuropsychiatry.
Awesome. So whenever I had the idea, this was like 6 months ago, I thought, okay, this is going to be cool. We did the one mixtape episode, and then so every couple of months I'll pick people who kind of were in the same category, and I'll put them back together, and we'll have these real specific conversations. Still think that's a good idea. But as the anniversary started coming up, I was like, man, wonder if it would even be possible to coordinate all these people's schedules for a specific day and a specific time, because that's really tough to do. I mean, and it surprised me that all of you were able to. I think Bruce and I were kind of having that talk. I was like, look at this. This is all working out on this day.
It was within seconds, because you messaged and you said, what days don't work? And then like 10 seconds later, you were like, okay, how about this day?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that works.
I was really surprised that it all worked out. I mean, it blew my mind, actually. So, hey, that's awesome. And what was really cool when I looked at the stats, which I don't like to look at them from like a popularity contest, but it's just neat to see what people are gravitating towards. And so when the top 5 shook out, I mean, I was like, hey, these folks are all in really different slices of life. So this is not going to be like that original mixtape idea. I mean, these intersections may actually happen today. You know, if they haven't happened already on the show. So if you haven't listened to the mixtape episode, what we do, or what we did last time anyway, is I have went back and listened to each of your episodes with a little more acute ear, and I didn't pull things out specifically to be sensational. I didn't pull things out to sabotage you.
Oh, that's good, because I'm nervous.
Because I mean, I don't want it to be like that. It's supposed to be healthy and stimulate conversation with people that maybe wouldn't all sit at the table together.
I was scared that you were going to pull out the part of my episode that said, oh, well, I'm not listening to Tony's because he doesn't need as much love as the rest. But I did listen to it, and it was great.
Thank you.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I just went back and listened and was like, what jumped out at me? I had no other agenda than that. Like, what did they say that stopped me for a minute? Because a lot of things stop me when I go back and listen to people talk. But that's what I did, is I picked a few things from each one of y'all's that really just stopped me. That's something I wanted to reflect on and maybe get you to talk about even more and see what other people thought. So that was how it worked. It was no agenda beyond that, just what jumped out at me. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to play those, and then that's going to be the way our conversation goes. And when the conversation wraps up, we'll move on to the next person. I had selected you guys randomly. Carrie's got some time restrictions, so we're going to move Carrie's
plumbing issues at home.
So we're going to put Carrie's to the front, and I'm going to go ahead and cue it up.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, so get ready.
The shyest person at the table should not go first, regardless of plumbing issues.
Who's the shy? You think you're the shyest person at the
Charlie.
table?
Seems to be Charlie.
I'm actually an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert.
All right, so let me
this
get
is so
you.
fancy. For everyone watching, there's like a TV screen. There's a whole thing happening you can't see.
Fine, Carrie. Okay. All right, Carrie, so you said this. See if you've changed your mind.
A lot of pressure. And we talk about what does it mean to be a feminist, and we start out in the beginning, raise your hand if you're a feminist, and half the class will typically not raise their hand because I think it's gotten a negative connotation. But the definition of a feminist is anyone who supports gender equality.
Yeah.
And so by the end of this, we ask again, raise your hand if you're a feminist. Like, everybody should be.
Yeah, I see what you mean, right.
And so when I talk about my dad or my husband being great feminists, they never once thought my place was behind someone else or my place was at home, and there's nothing wrong with that's where your place, that's what you're called to do. You do what fills you up and makes you feel good, but that was never a pressure for me to do that. It was always, you do whatever you want to do and we're going to support you.
Yeah.
So if you want to run for president, go for it. If you want to stay home and raise kids, go for it. It's your choice and we got you. But those times when I'm feeling overwhelmed or nervous or, gosh, this is so hard, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
I've got those cheerleaders behind me saying, you can do this. You can do hard things.
You said it.
I forgot we even talked about that.
Yeah. See, that's what's good about this. It's pretty fun, right?
Yeah, I still feel that way. I mean, every day my husband is the best, biggest feminist I know, and sometimes even pushes me to be better at it. And we're raising a daughter. I'm raising sons too. I read, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. The Lean In lady. Why can't I think of her name?
Don't know.
I don't know who you're talking about.
She worked for Facebook. Sheryl Sandberg.
Okay.
She wrote a book several years ago called Lean In, and there was a chapter in it about girls being bossy. And when you're a kid, when you're told don't be bossy, if a boy had done the same thing, he's taken the bull by the horns, he's a leader, and girls are kind of shamed for it. And I let him read that passage, and he was like, oh my gosh, we do that.
Yeah.
And he said, we're not using that word at our house anymore.
Bossy.
I don't want Caroline to ever feel like she can't be the boss.
Right.
And a friend of mine quoted Doc McStuffins the other day and said, she said in the show, she's not being bossy, she's the boss.
And Doc McStuffins' dad is a stay-at-home dad, and the mom is a doctor. Dun, dun, dun.
Nice.
How awesome is that?
So I love that line from Doc McStuffins, and I think that's a nice thing for girls, especially young girls, to hear. She's not bossy, she's the boss, and that's okay.
Yeah. I wondered about it. The reason I stopped on that is because I think sometimes the words we use are what off-puts people, and I kept wondering, like, what is off-putting to people when they say, oh, are you a feminist? Why does that offend? And I think, and it just made me wonder, because then I listened to your explanation of what a feminist is, and it's like, I support gender equality. And I said, and I thought, well, okay, maybe this is where, again, trying to get in the mind of the other side that's offended by that, maybe this is where they're saying, well, then why are we using a female word to describe something about gender equality? And it just made me think that this is how the beginning of change is. We have to use the language that we know to eventually end up in a better way of speaking, right? So, like, I can see a day where we won't have to say the word feminist anymore.
Yes.
We won't have to use that word.
It's like if it was a perfect world and everything was starting off fresh and it was even, feminist would seem like it's kind of tilted to that side of it, but with where we've come from,
right?
And we're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet. It's still, in order to balance the scales, you have to tilt it to one side, and so that's why that word is still being used. And hopefully, we can have a future off in the distance where, it is even in a neutral word. But we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Well, the book that influenced Western civilization, the New Testament. Masculine's considered strong and good. Feminine's considered weak and bad, whether that's male and female or a male. And so what influenced our culture to think that way goes all the way back thousands of years ago.
Very
masculine,
good,
strong, feminine, bad, weak. And so there needs to be a turning of that.
But I think the word feminist is off-putting to people because there's an assumption that because I'm a feminist, I'm a male bashing. I feel like I'm better than, and I don't feel that way at all. I feel like I'm different with different strengths and different gifts and different talents, but isn't that true for everybody, whether you're male or female?
I teach my sons, hey, if you want to cry, cry. I mean, this ain't no tough guy house.
Right.
If you need to talk, please. I don't tell them to toughen up. We don't need more tough guys in society. We need some guys who can cry with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking specifically to the word, I wonder if the word would be received with such trepidation by some people if it had a masculine.
I wonder too. That's a good.
I think it's because for us, male is normal and female is maybe like an outlier. It's questioning the status quo. And so maybe there's a problem with the way that we receive that information just because it seems like it's pushing against things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. I think they're right.
Yeah, well, and it's like Tony said in his episode, the reason we call God or Jesus a man is because it was a patriarchal thing
society.
At that time. And so now this is just women are the ones that are being affected the most at this moment by that. So we put the feminine, vibe on it.
And I think it's been weaponized by politics. Politics tends to do that. It comes into things and just takes a word and weaponizes it, and then all of a sudden you have a base that hates the word, and then you have a base that supports the word, and it's sometimes it's not even about the word anymore. It just becomes about the politics.
That's right. The labels are just terrible, but you have to take the emotion out of it and break it down to the actual definition.
Yes.
The reason we even talk about it, when I'm in a school our programs are for male and female, and we usually do a mixed gender class. A couple of schools split. But I do have one program that's just for high school girls called Women in Media, What Are You Buying? And we look at the image of women in videos and music and TV and advertisements, and what does that say about us and how we feel we should be treated or how we should treat each other. So that's where the feminist conversation even came from.
And that's awesome. I remember having that talk in Dr. Brayman's class when we were in college, and it was kind of illuminating for me. And so for kids to be getting that before they're in college, the earlier they can get that, the better. Yeah. And so it's awesome y'all do that with younger.
It's fascinating to watch people's blinders come off because you're so desensitized to the imagery we see. It's no big deal until someone calls your attention to it, and then you realize how truly upsetting it is. Some of the advertisements that are out there, even in Burger King.
Yeah, no, it's true.
They don't paint a great picture of women.
Yeah, I mean, Jonah and I were talking about this. We talk about language all the time in our household and what words mean and why we say them. And he kind of gets in these little skirmishes with other kids. And you know, back whenever the gay pride parade during Pride Month was going on, parades were going on, one of his kids came after him and was like, well, there's going to be a straight pride parade. You know, if there should be a gay pride parade, we should have a straight pride parade. And why can't we? And all this. And John said, well, you can. He said, but the reality is, he's like, you know, you don't need one.
Because straight people have been so
That's right.
I was going to say, every day
you're
is a
missing the point. That's right. The point of the parade is the pride comes from, hey, we need this because we've been kind of stepped on for so long. And, you know, it's so funny how easily we miss the point. And it kind of gets wrapped up in that word, too. It's like the people who are offended by that. You're like, well, like Bruce said, it's weighted to one side. We need to rebalance the scale, so that's why we got to do this. You know,
if you just leave the scale alone, it's not going to rebalance. You have to put something on that other end to help it balance back out.
Yeah, that's important work to do.
We live in a tribal time of teams. People love to come together over a common enemy, you know.
Yeah.
And so a while back, my wife had posted something on social media, and somebody very close to us was arguing with her about it, you know. And they said something derogatory to her, and so I text this person. I said, hey, what would make you think you just say that to my wife, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, well, she seems like she's one of those nasty feminists.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, I am too. Okay. And so I don't know why you think that's a bad word.
Yeah.
But for him, they just vote different than him, so they can't be good.
Right.
And that's the time we're living in.
Yeah, it is. That's why it's important, I think, to have, honestly, getting back to why y'all are all here. I think it's important to have these types of conversations. And because we're all just ordinary people, you know. I think sometimes, for me, there's a misconception that we have to be somebody special or that we have to carry some kind of special title behind our name to do something good and to change the world. But we got to do it in small ways, and we're all just plain people in different categories in life.
And I think as men, most of us will understand that there is a problem, but we don't get to see it on a daily basis. We read about it, we hear about it. It's kind of like how the Me Too movement was for me. I understood that these things took place, but then when the Me Too movement happened, it was like, wow, I did not understand that it was at this large scale and it was going on all this time. And so you just, you know, it's easy for us to forget about it and kind of put it away, put it in a box and not think about it again. But when that was confronted, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
And honestly, even after experiencing it, it was until that became so big and talked about that I thought, oh God, my kid has to live with this too. And it was just kind of, this is the way my life is. And people have been jerks and you roll with it. But that Me Too movement gave me pause for a second and step back and really look at these things that have happened over time critically and realize, God, that really wasn't right.
Yeah.
And shouldn't stand.
No, I know. It's sometimes it takes having somebody close to you be in the category that's being attacked for it to really shake you loose. I mean, I feel like that with Jonah all the time because when I hear hateful things being said about the gay community, I'm like, dude, you're literally talking about the top tier of the people I love in this world. Like, you know, where do you think this is going?
And the top 2% of all suicides in America are gay kids who grew up in Christian homes.
That's really
so out of everyone who kills himself, the top 2% are those.
The stakes are so high. Like for someone to come and use that kind of words, whether you think you're whether you think you're spouting those hateful words in a quote unquote safe place where they won't fall on ears that are hurtful, the stakes are so high that you're not allowed to say stuff like that anymore.
Yeah.
Like you can't, you need to change your heart.
The approach is so misguided, because even if deep down in your gut you believe it's wrong, and it's your job to inform someone to change them, that's a misguided approach, in my opinion.
Right.
There's a generational disconnect too when you talk about the way women are treated in feminism. Like for us, that means complete equality across the board. You can do things better than me. You can think through things better than me. I need to admit that. Men have had sex for pleasure their entire lives, and no one's ever said anything about it. Women can do that too if they want to. Not saying that may be the most healthy thing, but there has to be equality across the board.
Yeah.
But you talk about the older generation, and their idea of respecting a woman was she needs to act like a lady, and I need to treat her like a lady. And then whatever that idea of is what a lady is, then you still see that today. Like they need to look like ladies and act like ladies, and we will treat them like ladies.
Right.
But our generation is like, no, they can do whatever you can do, and sometimes a lot better, so get out of the way.
Yeah. It's interesting. It makes me think of an article that I'm about to completely relay wrong because it was too long ago, but it was something I read about Catholic school and Catholic school uniforms and kind of where that came from. And, eventually in society where those uniforms became, she's a good Christian girl if she dresses like this, and he's a good Christian boy if he dresses like this. But where those rules actually came from had nothing to do with any kind of Christian teaching at all. It had a lot more to do with things that the board of the school had decided on. But then because it was tied to the mass and the teaching that was going on in school, and you blend these two together as these generations go on, that becomes synonymous with, well, if you're a good Christian boy, then you have a short, nice, clean haircut, and you wear these clothes, and you dress a certain way, and you speak a certain way. That's what a good Christian boy does. And a good Christian girl wears her skirt a certain length, and her hair is a certain way, and that's what a good Christian girl does. Has nothing to do with that. Those two things get slapped together, and all of a sudden we got a Reese's peanut butter cup, and nobody remembers, what the original thing was.
And really that's happening to this day. I graduated, I think I was the last class that didn't have to wear uniforms. So I got to wear my Jinkos and stuff to school. But now that I'm shopping for my kids, you go and look. I mean, when they first got uniforms, it was like they had to wear this one thing. They had to look uniform. And now when you go shopping, they have like 20 different styles. They're not even about uniforms anymore. It's about dressing preppy and looking like you're upper class. That's really what uniforms are about now. They're not even uniform.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, how we get things the old story, which we've probably all heard, is, baking the ham in the pan. The story about
cut the ends off.
It's like mom and her daughter cooking a ham, and so she's like, well, we cut the ends off, and she's like, well, why do we cut the ends off? Well, I don't know. Let me go ask my mama. They go to grandma's house. Grandma says, I don't know. Let's go ask great grandma. And they get to great grandma's house, and she's like, well, the pans were smaller whenever I was,
just didn't
baking.
Fit in the pan.
It had nothing to do with anything other than this weird thing that gets carried over, and we just propagate that and pass that mess on to the next generation.
Absolutely.
There's a picture we use when we do our women in media presentation with our girls, and you see a woman from behind, and there's her skirt, and on her leg there's hash marks, and each one says prude, goody, and all the way up her leg the judgment changes. And I think that's such an important conversation to have with teenage girls, because they're kind of struggling. They're judged whether that skirt is long or it's short. They're going to get a label and judged for it. And
then derogatory names that they would never call a guy.
Right.
Yeah. Jonah tells me stories about that just from even here in Sulphur. I mean, like now, they walk around with these little strips of wood that are measured a certain length, and it's such a big deal. And I told him, I said, man, this just creates... Well, I can get off in the weeds on what it creates, but for me, I go, this is just the strangest little system of control. And one of the folks here that works with me, Nicole, she said something really great about school in general. She said how difficult it is. I never really thought about this, but she said, it's so scary becoming a young adult when you're 16 and 17, and all of a sudden you're going, college, my career, my future, what do I need to do? And they're throwing all that at you. She said her thought always was, I've had to ask you to go pee. I've had to ask you for everything, every decision And now all of a sudden you're pulling that away and saying, ta-da, now you get to make all your own decisions, when I've had to like raise my hand to speak for all these years. So I never really had considered that before. I was like, wow, that's an interesting meditation.
It's definitely something I have to work on in my therapy. Whenever I have teenagers come in, a lot of times parents will have the kid might be 14 or 15 and they're not even doing chores yet. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to cook anything. And it's like, in 4 years they're probably going to be off on their own. We got to start getting ready for it. And so that definitely fits in. But then you also get into the human brain doesn't even finish developing until the later 20s, and we're forcing kids to make these major decisions at the age of 18. And at some point, society's going to have to catch up, and we're going to have to push that decision making back. Maybe college gets pushed back a couple years, or I don't know how they're going to fix it, but they're just not ready to make those decisions yet.
Yeah. The machine doesn't a one size fits all. That's just the truth. It doesn't work for everybody the same way.
I definitely picked my college major because I didn't want to take any more Spanish. And nursing, which should require Spanish, didn't require it. And architecture did require Spanish. So
interesting.
And I thought 18-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to choose. Shouldn't make a life decision based on a Spanish
I scrolled down the
requirement.
list and said, what's the least amount of college that I need for a degree?
I was a tuba performance major. At some point in there, that might be where y'all first recognized me as one of the all-state tuba players in the state of Louisiana in 2001.
That's why you look familiar.
I knew it.
And at some point I realized there wasn't a lot of tuba jobs out there. So I switched to music education. I was actually a band director for 2 years at Sulphur High School's 9th grade campus, and then I didn't like it. So so it took me about 21, 22 till I decided I didn't like the path I was heading in. I switched.
I mean, I think we need to be okay with that, especially in this world today with so many options and opportunities. I mean, a long time ago, you go, oh, well, you live in Sulphur, you're going to work in the sulfur mines. I mean, that was kind of what you had, but there's so much going on. You have so many paths. I mean, people don't stick around. They can go really anywhere they want and do whatever they want. Yeah. So, finding I ask my son that all the time. Even last night we were laying in his room chatting about the day, and I was like, man, you're almost 18. He's like, Dad, I'm 16. I'm like, yeah, I know you're almost 18. You really are almost 18. And he's like, hey, I'm not moving out. Like, I don't think I'm 18 and I'm leaving. He's got it. He's like, I'm gonna figure this out. He doesn't want to rush into a decision, and I honestly applaud that. He was even saying, I just want to take some time to do it right. I don't want to jump off a cliff and go, hey, see you later. Hope it works out. Come get me later.
And they can't even make it. They can't even make it. I see these kids and they have jobs and they can't even afford their car insurance. Yeah. Because it's ridiculously priced. Yeah. They don't even trust the kids to drive, let alone move out. But they expect them to move out and be on their own. That's insane.
Sure. I mean, I see that. Well, no, it's okay. I mean, something that makes me think of that is a lot of times you see people pair up out of survival, and it goes maybe not even the healthiest relationship that you could be in for you, but you pair up out of survival because you're like, well, I kind of need... Gotta have two incomes to make it, and one person alone can't afford. Especially now in our area, it's very difficult for one person on a meager salary or minimum wage to go find and start a life. Right. So they pair up, and that pairing doesn't work out. Well, how do you pull that apart? Right. You're entangled, and it may not be healthy. It's very difficult.
Even with roommates, I don't even know how I would make it as a young adult now. Without a roommate, you'd have to have a roommate just to afford any of the apartments in the area.
Yeah, it's difficult. Youth have a lot to face. I mean, this is wild how these conversations go. We started out, Carrie, see, this is what I love about the mixtape. You were going to say something, though, and I derailed you.
It's slightly off topic now. My husband, Michael, and I have talked at length about how when you're growing up, if you're good in science and math and you're a smart kid, then you're going to go to med school. And if you're good in history and English and you're smart and you want a good career, then you're going to be an attorney. And that, when we were growing up, it seemed like those were your two choices. Right. If that was what your strength was, that was where you were headed. And he took the MCAT and did all the pre-med requirements, and sent in his application at the last minute, decided this isn't what I want. And he's a real estate developer. But what teenager knows that that's a career path? That's an option. You only know about these really obvious traditional roles, and there's so much more out there that you don't know that's a job.
Yeah, I've kind of experienced that. I mean, not to get too far off into big long history, but I mean, I wanted to be in education, and I had this idea I wanted to be an art teacher. I loved art. I was good at art. I thought I'd be an art teacher, but I had so many voices in my life saying, "Oh, you're never gonna have a good salary. You're not gonna make it." Even educators were telling me that in college, and so I shifted out of education into advertising because advertising is where the big bucks at. Well, obviously, you see how big my office is. It's not where the big bucks are at. If you're gonna live here, it's for me. It hasn't been where the big bucks are at. And so when you do, it took me longer to kind of go, man, this stream I'm in, this trajectory, this raft I'm on, I'm not 100% sure this is my raft.
Right.
But it's too, and everybody says, you can change your life anytime. I don't buy that 100%.
Well, you can evolve it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
Right.
I was like, well, okay, I can't change it, but I can redirect what I have been on. Okay, so I've been on this raft. You're sitting at my redirection, to be quite honest with you. I mean, this is me redirecting the resources and going, okay, I'm on this raft, but we can do something different with it. I can't necessarily just jump out of this river. Right. I don't have the strength alone to paddle to the shore and just build a new camp.
There are too many people on your boat depending on you too.
Right. Once you're in it, but I can use it differently, the energy of the water, if that makes any sense.
I didn't even think straight when I was 19.
Who does?
I couldn't decide between starting a punk rock band or being a professional boxer or a detective. So
oh wow, yeah.
So I became a pastor.
There you go.
just do all three.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. I mean, what do we all the dreams we have? I mean, sooner or later it starts to solidify and become something. You know?
That's very true. I mean, whenever I have the opportunity to talk to our older dancers about, college and things like that, it's, I always try to tell them that find something now that you can evolve later because, you just don't know. I mean, I went to school to be a nurse. I couldn't even make it 18 months because I did not want to do that. But I chose the quickest thing because I needed to go to college. I had a scholarship. I had TOPS. I'd lose it if if you take a break, you lose it. So it was like, okay, well, I got, $25,000 in scholarships, full paid for TOPS. You got to go to college. All right, well, I'll do this. It's only 18 months. I couldn't even make it. Because it's not what I wanted to do.
And at the same time, when you're getting married, when you're having kids, when you're giving us grandkids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then, how hard is it to change after you've been on a path for a while? And then and you start to go, hey, I need to make a shift. It's time for me to change. You feel it. It's like critically happening inside of you. And then everybody outside of you may not be ready for that change to happen. How hard is it to change then? Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm having a critical shift.
It's crazy. I'm 43 and I feel like I haven't even started.
Right.
Wow.
I just feel optimistic. I'm like, I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
I don't know what I will.
I'm going to be a famous YouTuber.
Yeah.
Tuba? Post those tuba videos.
Tuba.
That's oh my. I just dropped the O.
Be my punk rock band.
Who's ready to be the next victim? Now that since we broke the order that I picked, let's just go around the table. Amanda,
your birthday's next.
You're next. Let's just go in the order. We're just going to go in a circle.
I'm very nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Okay. Next step though of this podcast is I'm going to need you to set up a little camera, and then when you're recording podcasts, let people see the video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The reactions.
Yeah, because people want to see people's faces.
Yeah. I've had a few people. Oh, do you know why we don't do video, right?
Pourquoi?
Because I got camera.
Oh, that's
inside.
true. You told me that.
I mean,
okay.
we wouldn't even be talking.
Right. Okay.
Now.
Never
If there was a
mind.
camera in here, I would be like, oh god.
Okay.
Who's Amanda? I don't.
It's Amanda.
Oh.
Yell it.
It was the gender thing. I got
I want to hear
confused.
later.
You can't do anything
I
like
want to
that
hear
with
later
Bruce. It's just
why
kinda...
you're
Maybe
Charlie.
change it? Okay.
No, why you're not Amanda Yellow.
All right.
I'm very curious.
Can we
as
know
well.
now? People want to know.
The people want to know?
Yeah, let's
If I
hear
want to
it.
know, people want to know.
Well, it started off as Amanda because whenever I was younger, I don't know, stupid jokes, like.
Yeah, Amanda.
I'm Amanda.
Yeah.
I'm a man. You can't, gender equality. Right. I was like, well, I am Amanda. And then whenever I met Roger, he had a friend in Texas. Well, we have a friend in Texas, and that's what he would call me, Amanda. Is Amanda coming? And so I was like, well, so that was my Facebook name. But then somebody turned me in for having a false name. Yeah. I don't know who, but the only person I can think of is they were sending me messages and friend requests. And so whenever I started inquiring about how I knew them, they and then I was following them, and so then I sent them a very kind message. And if any of you have gotten a message from me, you know how intimate it can be. And so whenever you're a lady and you receive a message from me that I could be a man, these intimate type of messages are can be off-putting, but I don't really ever realize that. And so then finally, this lady, she was like, "Are you a guy or not?" And I was like, "Oh, no." I said, "Oh, I'm a lady, you know." And she said, "Well, you should change your name because that's confusing." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do that, but thank you," you know. And then like a couple of days later, I got a thing that was like, "You need to turn in some mail or something with your name on." I was like, "Well, fine." Well, my other name on Facebook was Charlie Sue because I don't ever want a real... if you go to my Facebook page, you might know what I do for a living. You might not. I like it better whenever people don't. Only if you know me do you know what I do for a living. And I like that because it's not plastered all over my Facebook page. So, you know, in an effort to kind of keep people at bay, you know, it's harder for me to be followed or found, which I'm not embarrassed of anything that's there. It's just, I don't need people, you know, typing in my name and trying to find out who I am.
So for privacy reasons, you're Charlie Sue now.
I mean, privacy,
it's not privacy anymore because everyone knows.
No, I mean, and everybody does know. It's just, you know, when you're scrolling, you just might not say, "Oh, that's Amanda," you know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, just silly.
Makes my job when I'm trying to tag people. I'm like, okay.
So sorry.
Hang on, Amanda is her name, and did I go and
I did not want to change it to Charlie Sue, but that was my other name, so it was easier to you know, for them to accept that. Facebook, powers that be.
Mine was the other way. I kind of knew Charlie from the group, being in Newsies, kind of in the group in there. And so whenever I was going back to look at her podcast, it was like, "There's no Charlie here. Like, who the heck is Charlie? Where's Charlie at?" And then I think at some point in time, something came up that said Amanda, and I was like, "Oh."
And I like it because it brings about more authentic conversation because the name is not associated with the person exactly. So, you know, I can be these two, like, even though he refused to name my episode with Amanda, absolutely refused. But, you know, now it's kind of like, well, you know, only if you, I don't want people to say, if you only know me as Charlie on the internet, I don't want you to go and look for me as Charlie because then, I don't know, you know, it's weird.
You're just having fun with it.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, that's what it seems like to me. It's like fun and whimsy.
Because you don't need to...
And it should be
You're
totally
not into stalkers. Yeah. Is that where we're trying to get at? You're not into people
I've never had a stalker before.
A virtual stalker. I do that frequently. I virtually stalk people frequently.
Yeah. I mean, I stalk everybody, and I send out like crazy messages that are very long, but, you know...
You're a good fan, though. I think you're I tell people... That's why I'm here. You're an engaged listener. I mean, like, that's what...
I love it.
We have conversations. Yeah. I mean, we do about the show. I mean, that's the whole point. You don't want people to go, "Don't talk to me about that." I like that. You message me all the time.
Sometimes I do. Sorry.
I mean, no, but sometimes when I have time, we talk back and forth about it. It's fun.
I like it.
I mean, it's a show about conversation. So, I mean,
I'll talk to anybody that'll listen.
Well, let's see what you said in your episode.
Oh, God.
Speaking of.
We were talking about the human design, the books, and so that's like a birth chart, and every single design is completely different, and there's different systems, there's different chakras, there's different gates that are open in these, and some are closed, and some can only be open if you're with someone who has an open gate, so all of these things make a difference. It's not just I am this person and we all should be like this, but no, we all have a purpose: the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. Everybody has a purpose. Even if, to be honest, it sounds terrible, but even if that person is to be so vain that someone else realizes that they don't want to be that vain, that person's job is done. And that's it. Yeah. That's their job. Yeah. And we have to love them for that, for who they are. Yeah. Because they've completed their mission. Their mission was to be so vain that hundreds of other people saw that that's not how they want to live their life. Well, I hope Mike's going to listen to this because I imagine that would be the part that you took. about the human design.
Oh, yeah?
I was actually thinking about that.
Okay, wow.
Last night. So now I'm supposed to talk.
Well, you don't have to talk. Does anybody have any thoughts about what you said?
I feel better about President Trump now. Now that you said that.
Really?
I feel great about it now. Like, maybe his purpose is for us to realize all the junk we shouldn't do.
Interesting. We had a similar conversation about that. I played this for my team, and I was like, these are the things I've selected, and we ended up talking about the president based on that too. And we had a similar conversation. One thing that popped out to me, I'm going to talk about the Dow Teaching. I talk about it in every episode, but this one verse that has always stuck out to me, even when I was a young person, I was like, this is an interesting thing to meditate on. And it says, what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? And I remember where I was at when I read it. I was riding in my truck. My dad was driving. We were driving through New Mexico on our way to Colorado. Open. There was nothing to look at, and I remember reading that line and closing it, and I was like, I really got to think about this. It reframed a lot of things, man.
Yeah. Repeat that a little bit slower.
What is a good man but a bad man's teacher?
Yeah.
What is a bad man but a good man's job? And it just dives into what you said. I mean, it's easy to demonize people and go, man, because I don't like the man. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't talk about politics too often. Don't like.
Right.
People ask me all the time.
His purpose is for us to say, hey, kids, don't act like that.
Don't act like
Don't
that.
act like the president.
Yeah. He's a great foil. I mean, it's a great example to go, there's so many things that when I get into these conversations about that person particularly, it's like the sources grows. Sources. And I go, look, I don't even have to give you sources. Yeah. My reasons, most of them on the front end, have nothing to do with sources, things that you're going to find in articles. I don't like the way he talks. I don't like his demeanor. I don't like his look. I don't like the way he engages with people. I don't like his posture.
I don't like the way he talks to women.
I don't like the way he talks to women. I mean, we haven't even got into the stuff where I'd have to go get some sources. I just don't really care for the person.
If he were a TV character, he would dwarf he would dwarf Queen Cersei, he would dwarf King Joffrey. He would be the greatest TV character of all time.
Yeah.
But he's not a TV character.
Right, it's a real person.
Those are Game of Thrones references for anyone who doesn't Game of Thrones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I did not know.
I did is it called Enneagram?
Yeah.
Enneagram. Let's share.
I did that this week for the first
Wait,
time.
hold up your number. Just a sec.
5 with a wing of 2.
I'm a 4. You don't
I have
know?
no idea what's going on.
One all the way. Okay,
happened.
it's similar to Myers-Briggs. No. So it's similar to Myers-Briggs, and then it's a personality type thing, but it's a million times better and more accurate. Have you done it?
I did it, and I forgot what my numbers were.
Okay, then you're a 5.
Jeez, I hope
There's
I'm a
2
4.
tests out there. On the second one, I scored a 1. I'm a reformer.
Yeah.
But on the most comprehensive one, I did a 5 with a wing of 2. But that helped me understand other people, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It goes back to that.
The whole
Like,
premise
realizing
is
what
to
theirs is.
Understand other people's motivation. So
Right.
I'm a 1. We're doers, task oriented. We walk in a room and see the problem and let's fix it. Whereas
Yeah.
other people perceive us as being negative and pushy. I'm not trying to be ugly. Let's fix it.
Is anybody a 2 here?
Yeah, I have almost a 2.
What's that?
One of my best friends is a 2, is a helper. You
Helper.
like
Need to
help,
be needed.
help.
What's
yeah.
a 3?
Just love.
I'm not a 3. I don't remember.
I'm
What's
a
a 4?
4. I'm a
What's a
4. And a 4 thinks that they're like the most unique person. No one is like a 4. Seriously. Like whenever a 4 meets somebody else who says they're a 4, they're like, doubt it.
I still feel like this is a cult.
A little bit. It's like,
It's very popular. A lot of people talk about this.
Well, I'm into all those kind of things. We do, like, in my episode, we talked about the 4 tendencies, the, questioner, upholder, and blah, 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 because you can, generally with those 4 tendencies, you can say one thing 4 different ways. You can say, this is what we're going to do. That's the person who just doesn't have a problem doing anything. And then you're going to say, I need you to do this. So then you're getting into that person who's going to uphold their end of they're the obliger. So they're obliging you. So you say, this is what we're doing. I need you to do this. This is why we're doing it. And if you don't want to do it, that's okay. But then there's repercussions. So then you've hit the, obliger, the rebel, the questioner, so I like that kind of stuff because it helps you be able to, not for you to understand yourself better, but for you to be able to communicate with others better, because sometimes people ask me for how to say things to certain people if they're trying to text a message or something like that, and they're like, well, how do we... I said, well, it depends on what you want. If you want to get your point across, then be you and be as blunt as you want to be. If not, then say it a different way. If you would like to elicit the most response, that's what I'm trying to do in my job. I'm trying to get the most people to pay attention and understand at one time. Then I'm going to say it this way, because I want to touch on the one thing that's inside everybody that makes them understand. So now I have another test.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. And it was interesting learning about my mom, who's a 2. She needs to be needed.
Right.
And for a 2, they feel like the people who love them intuitively should know what they need.
Right.
I'm a 1. I need clear-cut expectations, and then I will rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And failure's not an option. But I don't intuitively know what you need. And so we butt heads sometimes about this. And it was just nice seeing it from understanding her motivation better. And then my husband, who's a 5.
How many members are there?
9.
Oh, well, I must be a 4, because I was like, oh yeah, 4, that's done.
I do remember when I took it, I had 2 numbers, like you said that about like a wing of, and I remember
It's like
seeing that, but I
modifiers
don't
to this
even.
thing. Like
It's like you're strongly this, but if we had to go a different way, that would be your wing.
And then once you get your typing, you can go on the website and put you and your spouse or your significant other together, and it shows you your strengths as a couple and your weaknesses as a couple. And I thought,
no, I mean it's interesting because I do that a lot in therapy.
Right.
If I'm working with kids, I'm trying to figure out the kid, I'm trying to figure out the parent, then I help them on the communication and being able to understand each other and
things like that are so fascinating. But as long as we don't stop with our number, well, this is what I am and this is what I need. No, it's like, okay, well, now I know me, now I know you. Let's get together in common ground.
The tests are dependent on how honest you are. And so you have to answer questions and not how you want to be, but how you really are.
How you actually
and
are.
that's difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit against assessments. My psychology community is going to give me. They don't. The major assessments that we do don't measure what we think they measure or what they say. They just cost a lot of money and make people a lot of money. Now this one's kind of for fun, but I've noticed that people change.
That's right.
You're very dependent on who's in your life, what you're being neglected with, and what you're getting. And so so you could have a number, and then of course I don't know this one, so I'm just talking. But
well, I mean, those types of things are good, even like counseling. I mean, getting into that, the benefit to talking things out or taking tests is for me, it's always been to reveal something that I maybe didn't see before. Because it's easy. We were talking about that river. It's easy to get in that river and go, oh, I know who I am. I know what I'm all about, and just you have this. For me, I call it my ego. My ego forms an identity that is very, very set in stone and very shaped. And then all of a sudden, this new piece of information comes along, whether it's through counseling, a conversation, a memory that gets restimulated, or a test. And then you go, I've never scratched this before about myself. And then you start to go, oh, wow, this explains all these other things that I do. Breaks down some of that ego identity.
I love your segment about what you said. My wife and I talk about that a lot, about our energy. And how certain people, the energy that you get from them is, off-putting. Yeah. And then some people just give you chills. They're so peaceful.
Right.
Yeah. And
your wife is like that.
Our energy doesn't die.
Yeah.
Your wife is when you're around your wife, she's a calming energy.
She has a calming presence.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to just hug her.
Yeah, I've even noticed, I'll give you an example of that very thing.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been raising Jonah with me since he was 2, so his memories are all of her.
Right.
But I've noticed as he gets older, when he has something he wants to talk about, he doesn't come to me first. He goes to her because he knows what her energy's like. Her energy, he can tell her most anything without a hot response. Not an angry response, but just it's a palatable platform space. I'm more hot and it's not, I don't mean negative when I say hot and cold, but I have more hot responses. It's
emotions,
like, hey, Dad, I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, okay. And then we're engaged. Boom, 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 boom. We're trucking along. We're on a train, me and him. And he knows that. We have 2 different types of energies.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I was talking about this maybe even on one of our B-side episodes that the Patreons can get. It's a secret podcast only for Patreons.
If you want to know what they're really thinking.
What we're really thinking, producing the show. But, when you talked about those energy channels, I'm reading a really good book right now that's about a specific type of prayer. And I keep talking about it because I'm really into it right now. I've been doing it for about a year. And it's Tong Lin, and it's called Sending and Receiving. And so in that form of prayer, not to beat a dead horse because I've talked about it a lot, but you essentially imagine yourself in all the flaws that you have, all the things that you suffer with, your anxieties, whatever they may be, fears, and you imagine yourself sitting across from yourself in that form. And then you breathe in the energy of your worst self into your heart. And you imagine it's like a dark smoke or something like that. You're taking off of yourself, and then you breathe it into your heart, and then your heart becomes sort of like a transformation chamber. That's the best way I would describe it, where all that stuff gets turned into light. And then you breathe that light back out to yourself, who you still see sitting across from yourself, and that version of yourself begins to be healed and bring that light in. And you just keep this process going till you sort of heal some of your wounds. And as you get comfortable doing that with yourself, which I have a problem loving myself, so it's a great exercise, you begin to do that for other people in your life.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So getting into the channels and things like that, it talks a lot about the channels and opening them. In that particular form of prayer, you're trying to open your heart channel, your heart chakra, and bring that right into your, they call it the subtle body, which is made up of, these channels and then the air moving within your body. And so you're trying to bring it into yourself. And in this book, what was really fascinating to me was when they would interview people, these Tibetan monks and these Western practitioners, the Tibetan monks thought it was funny because they would wire these things up to their heads to measure their brain waves when they were doing this prayer. And they would laugh and giggle, and they were like, why is this on our heads? And they were like, well, that's not where my mind is.
Oh, how cool.
They had always believed that they lived here. This is where their mind was. And I was like, this is so fascinating to me. Wow. And it gets into what this energy and sharing vibrations. And you can feel it when you're vibing with somebody.
Yeah.
And it's all, it's you can call it what you want to call it, but it's all the same thing. And it all the chakra centers and everywheres that they branch out to, and like the human design in specific, it talks about, your different sources. So your spleen and your kidneys and all the things that function in your body. So even your chakras and your gates, they're all leading to something specific, something that's going to excrete a certain hormone or, some type of a chemical that's going to make these things either line up or become out of whack. That's why we have to balance our chakras. You're balancing your hormones. You're balancing the things you're taking in and out, and the way that certain emotions have effect. Somebody said something on the internet the other day about gallbladder. She's having gallbladder problem. Well, she hasn't been eating that well. I'm like, well, don't beat yourself up over the diet. It's not, the diet may have an effect, a small effect, but it's more of the fact that you feel guilty about your diet that's making your gallbladder freak out. Yeah. So just be kind to yourself and don't worry about the food. Yeah. That's a rejoice. That's a thing that comes along with your new life that you've got an opportunity to have. So you got to enjoy it,
So if someone's listening to you and this is not a topic that they have ever been presented with, the chakras and all that, what would be a resource that you would suggest to them to understand better what you're trying to say?
I don't really know. I don't have I'm kind of like you. I try to stay very naive to things because I don't want to be a resource person. Gotcha. I don't want to have to say go. But I will say there's one book. It's if you're looking for something that's like, I'm hurting here, what emotion could be linked. It's a very small book. It's Ina Segal, and it's got a big index, and you say, okay, my bunion's hurting me today. You go to the back, you look up bunion or feet, and then you flip to the section. It's like, well, these are the emotions that may be causing some tension or stress in your feet, or your lower back is, associated with guilt or things like that. So then once you become aware of the emotion that's, triggering that, then, and it's all just physical. It really is, like your lower back. So if you're having an argument with someone, then your lower back may be tense. Well, it's because you're tensing up those muscles, which is making your psoas contract and, all these things. And
yeah, and the interesting thing about it is that science is starting to back it up.
Right.
And so in the past, they didn't have our science, but they were better observers than us. And so, you can even look at the author of Peter Pan. To fly, you have to think of a happy thought.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I'm teaching kids, think of your happy thoughts, it's literally releasing a dopamine release, which makes you feel like you can fly. So we're learning now, I use a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy, and it uses a lot of relaxing your muscles, power poses, things like that to change the chemicals that are getting released in your brain. And this is the stuff that the Tibetan monks were doing. And so they didn't know the science behind it, but they were able to observe that when they did these things, they felt better. And so it's just interesting because Western civilization was kind of like, oh, that stuff's stupid.
Right.
And now that the science is starting to prove it, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. This is an interesting conversation. I'm listening to y'all talk, and what this starts out as is, I'm always looking for nodes and connectors, and we're talked in the beginning about balances and things being weighted on one side and how we have to move to the other side. We're sitting here talking about all this beautiful stuff, but what we started out talking about was this person that was so vain that maybe 100 people would do better, and now we moved way past it into, okay, now we're talking about how can we talk about something more positive and better and sharing this great information,
which is good because I'm a positive Patty.
Well, it made me think of even Tibet. I have been following that since I was a young man, and it hurts my heart what those people have been through, and it's a true human tragedy on the surface, but at the same time, without that tragedy, that country's wisdom wouldn't get poured out to every country on the planet. Now there are American, Rinpoches and lamas that wouldn't exist without that tragedy. So it's, again, it proves that it goes back into, we have the tragedy, but yet we have the blessing too. It's just these sort of teeter-tottering between these two extremes.
The suffering gives birth to creativity.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like the Bible verse from Jesus that says it's easier for a camel to enter through the eye of a needle than to a rich man to enter in heaven. And it's a kind of the same thing for happiness. And so you work with somebody that has everything. They're used to having everything, and there's not a whole lot you can do with them because they just have this kind of melancholy about them. There's not a lot of empowerment, and where it's somebody who grew up with little, it's a lot easier to find happiness for them, to help them find that inner peace.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Continuing ed conference in May, put on by Harvard. It's a really good research, and they were talking about your patients who are experiencing depression. One of the best things to do for them is encourage them to volunteer. Yeah. Because in giving back, it helps you feel better.
Yes.
In so many different ways. It highlights the good in your life.
That's a legitimate study.
Yeah. It was fantastic.
Because you're operating more out of like what you were created to do. We were created to volunteer and to do and to
lift
help
other people up.
Yeah, and whenever you're not operating in that space, you're not operating how we were created by the maker, what we were created to do.
And I think it helps turn, rather than look in on yourself and just focus on those, you can turn it out. And I don't know.
One of the first jobs I had in the psychology field was at Volunteers of America, which is a great nonprofit organization. They do a lot in the community. And we would work with the lower income mentally ill. There'd be a lot of homeless population, schizophrenia. And so we'd get them hooked up with housing. We'd get them hooked up with medication, doctors, counselors, all kinds of stuff. But the biggest growth that I would see is a few of the people we would get them into volunteering or into jobs. And that was when I would see the biggest growth over doctors, over medicine, over counseling, over housing. Just that going out and volunteering and working was able to give them that growth.
I tell our gathering all the time, I said, y'all can hear me say things and teach things that'll help you. I said, but if you want your life to change, come feed the homeless with this. Show up and volunteer. And it happens. Their life changes.
When I went to do y'all's episode, where I got to spend the day with the folks doing y'all's food pantry, I came back here. Honestly, I was like, it woke little chambers up in my heart that sometimes fall asleep, because what I saw was joy on everybody's face. Everybody was happy serving, and it was just friendliness and kindness all day long. And
it's work.
Yeah, it's work. And there was person after person after person that if you let your empathy open up and really feel or even imagine their stories, you're going, these are hard stories that my life's not like this. These are people who are really struggling. This is hope right now, this line that they're standing in to get this food. And you're looking at that, and I mean, God, I cried 6 times that day. I had to turn my camera off and just sit down because I couldn't get my emotions together, collect myself, go back and film some more, and I just kept seeing joy, joy, joy over and over. And I was like, look at this. It's pretty special what this volunteering is doing for these people who are showing up to do this.
Amanda, my neurologist, I have multiple sclerosis. She's from Houston. Brilliant, by the way. She told me, she said, not taking your medicine won't put you in the hospital. She said, the way you think and your stress will. She said, this is why you have it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it does take a while. I mean, I'm not saying like ditch your medicine, but it's all interconnected. And whenever like the gates, to find other people, if you do your own human design, which is basically like a horoscope. It takes your time of birth, your area of birth, your name, because even the vibrations in each of the letters creates who you are. Whenever you're Amanda, whenever you're being said that, told that over and over again, it creates something in you differently. And, to find someone else with something that can heal you, gates that they have open that you may have shut, then we can become part of the whole that we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes me the balancing of things between again talking about getting all those things in alignment. I mean, it takes everything. It makes me think of that Buddhist story where he was trying to achieve enlightenment and he was doing all this stuff that everybody was telling him to do, and so he was like, I'm going to fast. And he sits he's sitting there and he's starving to death. I mean, he was going to die. He really was going to die. And then somebody offers him a bowl of rice and he rejects it. No, I'm fasting. I'm going to achieve this spiritual place. And when the bowl gets put in the water, it gets caught in the middle of the stream, the eddies, and it sits there swirling. And that's when he realized, I'm going about this all wrong. I need to find the balance between all these things. I need to do what's in the middle. And that changed everything, was beginning to understand that it's not one extreme or the other and living in one world or the other. I do that. I mean, I'm guilty of it with my health or with anything. Feeding myself too much of one type of thing, thinking I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is my path. And then your path just falls away and you're like, what happened? I was doing the thing.
And you get conditioned to release certain chemicals when you're in certain stimulus. And so I think a lot of us get conditioned to release negative chemicals whenever we're thinking of math or having to do math.
Right.
And so one of the things I've been working on with one of the soapboxes I'm on with my kids that I'm counseling lately, because bad grades are starting to come in, is starting to try to pump them up as they're going to do homework. So trying to get to where they walk into the room like they're a boxer. They got the boom box on, the robe on, they're ready to kick some butt and stuff. And it's showing positive results there. They're doing much better in their homework.
I'm going to try that.
Brain's ready to study.
Wow, that's interesting.
We teach our kids power posing. We'll have a junior cotillion starting this Friday, and that's the first thing we teach them, because we have 100 kids in the room. You only have an hour with them, so you have to get the most bang for your buck. And so while we're there to teach them some dancing, the first thing we teach them is posture, to how to line up their feet over their knees, over their hips, over their heart and shoulders and head. And then we teach them how to power pose, because those are the things that are important.
When my daughter's spiraling out when she's upset over homework, she rolls her little eyes at me. I'm like, get up and do a downward dog. Mom, I don't have time. I have homework. I'm like, just get up and do a downward dog for a second.
Yeah.
And she'll do it, and she sits back in her seat, and she looks at me like, you're an imbecile.
Yeah.
But she feels better, and you can see that calm come over her. You need to.
Yeah.
You can't accomplish anything when you're frustrated or upset. Nothing good is going to come of that.
Yeah. At school, it is sit down on your desk for 8 hours and let's do some work and let's take PE out of the equation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's scary.
That was very good. We really got a lot. I love where that conversation went. I didn't expect it to, the way it started. It's beautiful.
I'm glad it changed.
That's what I love about this show. You just never know. But you know whose turn it is?
Bum, bum, bum.
Diana. All right.
I'm nervous. I hadn't done the equation that I was the next person in the chair. Here we go. And the truth is that the ocean that exists between someone who is a non-believer or who has experienced great hurt in their life and someone who's saying, here's the rule book, is so wide, it's uncrossable. And there are some of us who are called to make that ocean crossable. And the way you make the ocean crossable is not by handing rule books and being shiny, like I like to say. You have to be real, and you have to be like, the truth for me is and will always be that when I am elbow deep in a sink full of dishes, the thought, what if there is no God, will hit me on the side of the head out of nowhere. That will always be the truth for me. Me and God have an agreement, like, I'm gonna keep showing up even though like this crazy thing happened, God, like I'm gonna show up anyway.
Yeah.
And when people who are on the other side of unbelief, when people are unbelieving and they hear that story, there's a part of them that says, maybe I could be a believer then, if she's not unwavering in her faith. When people that are on the other end hear all of these rules and all of these, this is God, this is faith, this is truth, they look across the ocean and say, oh, that's what that is? I'm not that. I can never be that.
Right.
What's the point of even trying? I mean,
so that got me.
Can't believe I said that.
It's getting
That's
me
beautiful.
again.
It was very good.
Was it me?
Very.
Yeah, that one hit
download.
me when I was listening to it again. I was like, man, this is right where I want to be. I mean, it just, you know.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me and Tony fall back?
It reminded me of that passage where Jesus asked the guy, do you believe? He said, I do. Help me with my unbelief.
Yeah.
He said, I do believe. I just need some help, you know.
Yeah.
And most people are there. You know,
Yeah.
I need some help. But they've been given this certain picture of, if you can't do this, 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 and this, or you doesn't look like, then you can't be on our team, or you don't have it yet, or you need to try harder. And we tell our LGBT members all the time, you know, I said, you've been told that you can't be this and have faith. That's true. That's not true. That it's been stolen. So reclaim your faith. You know, come out as who you are, but come out as someone who believes too. If that's a part of your story, and don't let them steal that from you. It doesn't have to look like that. It can look like how it is in your life.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have a hard time with shut doors when it comes to conversations about God. I don't see in no place in my life and in my experience, which is just one human being with one set of eyes, every time I have ever experienced something that felt like the love or mercy of what I have come to call or understand as God, it felt like something pouring out or in. But it never felt like a wall. It never felt like a door. It never felt like anything that shut that was just for me. It always felt like abundance that was meant to be given away once I got it. And so when I have sensed something or language that was exclusive or for one gender or the other or one people or the other, I am repulsed. Not repulsed as in I hate it, repulsed like a magnet. I begin to not feel what I have come to perceive as the presence of the divine, you know.
Well, one of the themes of the overall narrative of the scripture, which it's not a basic instructions before leaving Earth, it's not a rule book. It's just it's a novel, is what it is.
Right.
One of the major themes of that is when it comes to people or rules or religion, God always chose people.
Yeah.
So if this was the line of being religiously taboo, Jesus stepped over it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so I tell people, I said, you've been told that you don't have faith or belief because you can't look like this. That's not true.
Yeah.
You know, and the Christianity and belief, and that's a wide stream. And the best that we have is our discernment and our interpretations, and none of those are perfect.
Yeah.
So, like when people say, God said it, that settles it. But,
Right.
well, no, what you're saying is this is what you understand him to said of a book that was written thousands of years ago. But the best you have is just your opinion of it.
Right.
You know, and then you have all these denominations that have left people out.
Right.
And so we come in to say, hey, there's a different picture if you still want to hold on, you know.
Yeah. I liked that message you had too about, the honesty of the sink. What you said, that's
that will always be, I assume, God, whatever, who knows, but I assume that will always be my experience. And that sink moment is why I am honest about things, because I don't see the sink moments happening that often. I'm going through something weird. I'm going through you know how when you feel like something's shifting within you, you go through, you can feel it if you're not a little bit removed from it, you can feel it. I was having some struggle with the whole gay thing, and I was thinking, I have 5 kids, and I'm Catholic, and first of all, my kids are, if I never address the gay thing with my kids, they already know what Catholics believe, and that is already planted in them. And what if one of my kids is gay, right? And I was thinking, if one of my kids is gay, this is all what I was thinking. Sorry, God. This is how Diana was thinking. Sorry, God, but I'm there. Like, if my kid is gay, we are there, 100%. Sorry, God. And I started sitting with that for a couple days, and thinking, wait, why am I saying sorry, God?
Right. Yeah.
If God is all loving, and the amount that I love my kids is a small measure of that, why am I protecting my children from God? So you know what I mean?
No, I do. Yeah.
And so that really changed things for me. That kind of led me on I'm constantly opening the box on God. I always say, oh, God is bigger than my understanding, and I open the box, and then I'm in that for a little bit, and then I realize my box is still there. It just got bigger, and God is still in the box. So I just think it made me realize, wow, God is so much bigger than I give him credit for. And if I think I have to protect my kids from God because they're gay, because maybe God's not okay with it, my understanding of God is probably not where it needs to be. I need to shift that.
That comes from a distorted theology in Christianity, which is Jesus came to save you from his dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
His dad's mad.
Yeah.
God the Father's angry. Jesus came to save you from. That's very messed up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
open the door. Why? Because of what's going to happen to you if you don't open the door. What's going to happen to you? I'm going to do something to you.
Right.
And so that's what we give to the world.
Yeah, I've always found that too, that the language is at odds with itself so often because the messages are so mixed. On one Sunday you may hear a certain set of words strung together and you're going, oh wow, that's some pretty harsh stuff. But then the next Sunday or in your own readings, you discover language that just breaks everything that you heard apart, and you're like, this is as you said, you have to sometimes go, hey, these words are not meant to be worshipped.
Right.
Not these written words. There's an outside of the boxness that we kind of have to make room for. I was talking about this on one of the episodes with Tom Trahan, and it's a little exercise I have, and it's that stick in the corner back there. It's got 2 ribbons on it, and one's red and one's yellow. But I always tell people that when they blow through the wind, I meditate on them because there's a 3rd ribbon there, and that's the mystery ribbon, and that's the one I have to make room for, is the thing I don't understand.
Yeah.
The thing that may come in to surprise me and shock me when I think I know what red is and what yellow is.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what I have to be to, and honestly, that's where the most insight comes from, is that space when I'm shook out of my understanding. A lot of
More
times.
uncomfortable we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be okay with the idea. I think for us to have any sort of real experience with the godly, you have to be okay saying you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And if you go on the internet and you see all of the things that other people post, and sometimes I'll do that. I'll go on the internet and I'll see people that are in my faith group post things that just make me... They just feel so unloving, and I can feel my tendency automatically shifting to judge that person, and to make them and their beliefs other, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I've been there. I've been where they are. And if we're pretending to be these super evolved, whatever, quote unquote people, wink, wink, then why is our natural inclination to say they're unlearned or not open or whatever? We have to turn that back on ourselves. So I don't know. I think I'm really passionate about people who are non-believers or who think they're non-believers because they've been told they're not, because I was that for so long. That it's hard when we, in our Christian space, say that God is all loving. And we mean that God is all loving. And then we turn around and say, Jesus died to save you because you needed saving because you were all, and we have to do this and you have to do that. Or the loving, he'll love you, and comma, period, whatever. Yeah. I'm just really passionate about that because I just want everyone to know that it's not what, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy.
I know what you're saying. Like, the world I grew up in was Protestant, but the phrases we heard all the time was, yes, God is love, but he's also just.
Right.
And I'm like, well, he's not a schizophrenic monster.
Right.
Like, at the core of who he is love. The Bible says that. But the thing about it, too, is there was belief and there were Christians before there was a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually wrote it, but they didn't have it before they wrote it,
Yeah.
And so a lot of times that is elevated to God, and God is God,
Yeah.
I mean, I think when we see anything in life, it's when something's smaller, it could be fit more towards the individual. And as that entity gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes more uniform, and the individuals tends to get lost. It even happens with psychology theories. I can use one theory on somebody, and I'm thinking, man, this is so awesome. Why don't I use this for everybody? And the next week, somebody else comes in. It's like, oh, this doesn't fit for this person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when early Christians, it was splinter groups, it was smaller cells, and then it grew into this big thing. And I think that's what gets lost, is that uniformity loses the individual.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like we have probably similar personal missions too.
Yeah.
My personal mission, when people ask me, it's like, I'm just trying to paint a different picture of Jesus for people who quit listening a long time ago. Not a new one, just I think maybe more accurate.
Right.
But there's people who let go of this a long time ago,
Yeah.
I was discussing with a friend the other day some of our glitch with religious beliefs. I'm Catholic, but I struggle sometimes because I feel like some of my friends and family and other Christians have gotten so focused on maintaining the rules of Catholicism, they've forgotten to be a Christian. And I don't want my Catholic faith to get in the way of me being a Christian first. Yeah. And I went through a Bible study a while back, and I don't remember a lick of anything in that Bible study other than one line. And the author of the study said, if it's not light and love, it's not God.
Yeah.
And I think of that all the time now, whether it's whatever the social issue of the moment is. If it's not light and love, and that's the judgment coming from friends or family, then that's not coming from God.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the gay issue. We spoke about this the other day. Right. My grandmother, she was like my Yoda, just all wise, all knowing, and she was cradle Catholic, very religious and kind to everyone. She didn't meet a stranger, loved everyone unconditionally, but she said we're all created in his image, and he didn't make a mistake. So I can't say that being gay is wrong. If he created us like him and he didn't make mistakes, how is that wrong?
And if you start in Genesis 1, you can get there when everything's good.
Yeah, it starts off
If
good.
your story starts in chapter 3, where everyone's bad, then you're not going to get there.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Father Richard Rohr?
I love him. I read his. In fact, he has a series on YouTube on enneagrams. He's a brilliant.
Yeah, he's so smart.
He's great. Yeah.
Now, see, he's in that.
I'm gonna have to go find it.
Richard Rohr is special, but they're here again. It gets into what people think versus the way God operates.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr, if you talk to a traditionalist, will throw him into the heretic category.
Oh yeah, he's a liberal.
Instantly. And I go, man, it's wild, but. Heretic on the lips of the traditionalist, but no one will actually, but he hasn't actually been excommunicated.
Right,
so
the
you go,
church is keeping him in.
Yeah. That's sometimes I think that's the problem I run into whenever, like it came up when we were talking about suicide on the show one day. And I don't even know if that's aired yet, but it will eventually. But, it came up because I had a someone raised in the Baptist church and someone who was a Catholic, and there was a suicide in the family, and it struggled with the ideas because the people in his community had said, they're probably in hell. And I had to stop right there. I said, this is again where sometimes what we're told versus what actually is within the framework of whatever your faith may be. And I go, well, here, since we have a rule book and people say that they trust it, let's actually look this up. And you go, oh, well, in the actual rule book, it doesn't say that at all.
Yeah. At
all. So you've been living your whole life based on what the community has formed around the tradition, calling themselves the tradition. They never showed you this little detail. Because that breaks down and opens up the mercy again. The door begins to open.
Have you heard that story? I'm sure you have, because I know you like St. Faustina, right?
Yeah.
That story, and I don't remember where I heard it, and I don't even remember if it's accurate, but it doesn't matter because it is to me, where she was talking to some priest or something about the teaching of hell or whatever. And the guy said, oh, but hell is a place. Hell exists. And she said, of course it does. And then she whispered in her breath, it's just that no one's there.
No one's there.
And like,
I love that.
When you do a literal reading of the New Testament, it was a literal place on earth. It was a trash dump.
Yeah.
And it was only mentioned 3 times, and every time is in the context of not feeding the poor.
Yeah.
So that was in the context of creating hell on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at it from a political standpoint, I think the Catholic Church is making changes. I think that eventually we will see LGBT not be ostracized. I think, and this might be wishful thinking, but I really think that the Catholic Church has an understanding that it's a big, giant entity, and if you make a change suddenly, there's always going to be a counter to that change, like with American politics. I think that when President Obama was in office, there was a lot of change that got made towards one direction. It was a lot of not bipartisan decisions, and that created what Trump was able to jump into. The change happened so fast that this counter movement happened, and that's how it kind of took hold. Whereas I think the Catholic Church has a better understanding of that, and so that ship is a giant ship, and you can look at the popes and see that there is love for the LGBT, and I think that they're trying to make the change happen slow enough to where there isn't that counter.
I think he is.
I've heard that same thing before, and I love that you said that, because that's what I was thinking as you were talking. I've heard this that the church or Christianity is a battleship, not a speedboat, and so you can't turn it and go the other direction that fast. It's just too many moving parts.
Ships take a long time to turn around.
Yeah.
But people don't, so let's all turn around quickly.
Yeah, that's right.
You're right.
We're with you.
That's good. All right. Well, Tony, it looks like you're up.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Going back to the original thought, what I think happens is a lot of times people consider their interpretations and their theology more sacred than people.
Yes.
Right. And to Christ, people were the most sacred. And so I always tell people, hey, I realize what you're saying, and you're very welcome to your beliefs. I mean, Christianity is a wide stream, but don't consider your beliefs more sacred than the person sitting next to you, because that person has the image of God. Your beliefs don't have the image of God in it. You have beliefs about God and who you think God may be like, but the person sitting next to you was created in the image of God, whether they're a trans person or a homeless person or someone that you disagree with politically. They have the image of God in them, and so view people as sacred. And that really did a lot of changing in my heart, when I kind of grabbed a hold of that.
People as sacred. What do y'all think about that?
It's a crazy segue that we made it to Tony's segment, basically talking about it before we...
Next. I was sitting on Charlie's one night, and this was years ago, and I was just looking around at everyone in there, and they were much different than me. I grew up in DeQuincy, but I was the weird kid with weird haircuts and Doc Martens and chains on my wallet, and everyone's listening to country music, and I can't stand it, and no one wanted to hang out with me and everything. And so I was kind of treated as the other growing up, even though I had the opportunity to not be that. But if something's popular, I don't like it. If you're going to wear Guess, I'm going to wear something else, whatever. And so that's just been wired in me since I was a baby. But I was looking at all these people that were different than me, and I just felt like God kind of spoke to my heart and said, I love everybody in here. And I just walked out just heavy, because everyone was so separated, and it just kind of did a number on me. I was just like, God loves everybody, You know, even the people which is hard for me, because when I run into people who I feel like oppress other people, or they stand for something that oppresses other people, I go into attack mode for people,
Right.
but I'm attacking other people. So I'm still in the place where I don't know how to figure this out. You know, I really don't, because there's people that I feel very protective of, and there's people groups that I feel very protective of. Not that they need me to, they're my friends and family, and I love them, you know. Yeah. And so if I feel like there's a policy or a person or whatever that's going to attack them or hurt them, I tend to not want to treat them as sacred. And I have to kind of pull myself back, because I can get harsh in my mind. I don't let it come out. I've controlled that part of me, but in my mind, I'm just like, I'm gonna have a conversation with you, and you're gonna feel ashamed, and you're gonna feel like you're a loser, and you know. And I have to really work on that, because I don't want those thoughts. They're very negative to me.
Yeah, I understand that 100%.
But I don't want to have my head in the sand either, to know that there's real oppression in this world. You know? But that's what I've discovered in Christian circles, is that people really, they hold on to their beliefs more than they hold on to, you know. Let's take abortion, for example. There's people have strong beliefs about abortion on both sides. They really do. And I'm not here to say which people have their own opinions. But when you work with homeless people like I do, and you see these babies born and no one knows who the daddy is, and you see that the uncle, and they live in poverty, and by the time they're 2 years old, the uncle is abusing them and molesting them, or the stepdad is, and then I have to counsel them at 13 to not kill themselves because they don't want to be alive. Well, that's a pro-life issue too.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so there's all these other life issues. You know, like my medicine for MS costs $5,000 a month. Well, I can't afford that. Now, if we had universal health care, I would be okay. That's a life issue too. But other people say, well, I don't want money going towards that. So that's all fine. But a lot of times we hold up these issues more than people. You know, and so people say, so what about the homeless lady who was raped and who's not sure how she can even feed this baby? And this baby, if it's born, is probably either going to die or be raped itself. Well, those are things we don't think about. You know, we think, well, people doing this for birth control. No, actually they're not.
It's not every story is able to
and that's a very low statistic too, you know. And so that's just one example of people saying, I believe this. Yes, but there are people here who have been through this.
Right.
And they are scared and they don't know what to do. Yeah. And if they have made a decision, the last place that needs to make them feel like they're going to burn in hell one day is that the church should be a safe place for people who've been through those types of, and that's what I mean. Like, we have these beliefs that are sacred, but there's someone next to you going through something, and you know,
that reminds me of something that was on Facebook recently. A while back, there was this video of this woman who was speaking to children about abortion, and she was on the pro-choice side. And so a lot of people that I'm friends with on Facebook were sharing it, saying what an outrage it was. And
I saw that video.
What I found was very interesting, and that made me really think more than the video, was the words people use to describe that woman in the comments. Is, you know, just she lost her humanity because of her viewpoint in the comment section. Now, no matter where you stand on the issue, it's like she's still a human with dignity, and if we believe that all humans have some intrinsic dignity, right, then why are we then removing her dignity from her in the comment box because she believes differently than us?
Because those beliefs are more sacred than her.
Right.
Yeah.
And the beliefs become more sacred than the solution. I mean, you could even make a compromise. Oh, let's do what we can to get everybody off the streets. Let's make these organizations where women who are pregnant can choose adoption, but we're also going to put them in housing and give them free education, give them all these benefits. And that's something that
let gay couples adopt.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. And that's something pro-choice and pro-life should all be getting behind, saying, okay, maybe we don't have to make it legal, but let's diminish it as much as possible. And as soon as you say that, it's like,
that's a word.
No, let's go back to politics.
which is the goal of most pro-choice policies, is to make it very rare.
Yes.
Understanding that if it was non-regulated, like in South Korea, there was 100,000 abortions last year, and it's illegal everywhere there. And there was over 100,000 under the table. It's kind of like the whole gun argument. You know, well, you ban guns, people still going to get them. Yeah. And you go to these states that have very restrictive abortion things, and the highest Googled search is how to do a coat hanger one. You see what I'm saying? That is the highest Googled searches in states like Mississippi. And so this is where it comes in, where, you know, people have to think past certain beliefs that they hold to, you know, and not change them, but see the other person as someone who's a real person who has, they've thought through this too, you know?
Yeah.
My wife says all the time, she's like, a lot of people are pro-choice because they're pro-life, because we realize that, you know, under Obama administration, the numbers for abortions had dropped the lowest they'd ever been in history since it became legal, ever, you know. The last 2 years, they've skyrocketed.
You know, this is where I talk about rules all the time with different people in various capacities, and recently in our life is going to really be a big segue, but I mean, it just makes me think of this, how a rule doesn't work for every situation, but we still want to enforce it as if it does. And for me, it's been having to do with bathroom policy at school. I mean, it illustrates the same point. I mean, my son has to go to the bathroom when he has to go to the bathroom, but they say no.
Right.
It's not the bathroom time. I'm going to pee in my pants. Hold it. I can't. It's not the bathroom time. That's the rule. The rule is the rule. So they hold the rule higher than the well-being of people, because then he pisses in his pants.
Right.
And then he's embarrassed and doing the walk of shame, and then we have to take off work, go bring clothes if we can, and it's a whole thing, and now he's got a stigma, and now, and those little things like that little, I've peed in my pants and everybody's laughing at me, or they're calling you a name now because it's happened more than once. That's changing the course of his life. It's planting a thing in him, and now he may have where he was maybe socially fine, now he's socially in, and now he's not having as big of a better friend group that he used to have. People are avoiding him. That rule created that, because the rule was more important than the people.
Because you need to make your digestional tract fit everybody else's.
Well, and the problem is not the rule. If there are scheduled bathroom breaks, like I said, I can't. Yeah, I mean, if there's scheduled bathroom breaks, then that's fine. But I don't understand why a teacher can't simply say, if a kid says, "I gotta go to the bathroom," why can't you just pull them over to you and in their own bubble say to them, "Do you really need to go, or can you hold it?"
Yeah.
And if they say, "I really gotta go," then freaking let them go.
Yeah, I just have to have.
But that is the conversation that's lacking. It's not, "I gotta go to the bathroom." You can't hold it. You know.
But this situation is very specific. You're right.
Right. It's like, why can't you just take 2 seconds to have one conversation about, do you really need to go, or can you hold it? Do you really need to go, or do you really just need to move around? Because if you need to move around, then, you know, we can get up as a group and take a movement break. You know, let's do that instead.
Now, as a former teacher, you are definitely going to have those kids who are going to abuse that, and they're going to try to get out of class.
See, that's what, and that was the conversation.
You see what we're having a conversation about, though? We're still talking about abortion. And the rule and the law. We're still, I mean, you're saying that and you're going to have those people.
And
you're also going to have
put out a disclaimer too. Like, we always try to encourage people towards life, but I don't, you know, we don't view people who have different opinions or anything as someone who's wrong or just different. Like, and that's where I think, you know, we feel more peaceful is, I don't want to convince anybody to be like me. And if someone's not like me, I think you're just as good and just as awesome as anyone else, you know. I just think we've gotten away from that. You know, if you're not like me, you're awful, you know, and I don't
And people don't understand, you said it, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I am pro-choice because I'm pro-life, and people don't understand that. Do I support abortions? No. Do I support people's choices? Yeah. I mean, yes. I would prefer for someone to have a choice, you know, because like you said, it goes so much further. Pro-life is not about abortion.
Right.
It's about suicide. It's about everything that you have to choose, life over death. Exactly. Every single thing. So we have to be pro-choice.
Right.
You know, for the sake of the whole piece. Because the molecules, you know.
And I think something that I've wrestled with on my side is, and not everyone thinks through this because they didn't grow up in this world, but I grew up in an evangelical Protestant world where that group of people starting in the 80s married themselves with right-wing politics, the moral majority, Jerry Falwell, people like that. And so what we saw our brand that I grew up in. I grew up Southern Baptist. By the way, an old Southern Baptist pastor told me one time, he said, I said, do you have doubts? He goes, sometimes when I think God speaks to me, I'm still only 50% sure. So I thought, oh man, if he doubts, I mean, whatever. But anyway, going back to that, what I've noticed is, and this came very clear when 9/11 happened, because, we were attacked by fundamentalist Muslims. Right. But George W. Bush was a conservative Christian in office. And so that gave rise to the next generation of nuns. I don't know if you know what they are, not Catholic nuns, but the nuns. We don't belong, no religion, Right. Gotcha. That was a backlash from, if this is what fundamental religion is about, they're causing all the problems in the world, we don't have nothing to do with it. So that gave rise to that. Well, what also happened was the evangelical conservative Christian church began to get looked at as the oppressors because we had political power. And anytime a certain group has political power and they start to legislate their brand of morality, then anyone who doesn't agree with that is going to feel oppressed. So what we saw over the past several years is a mass exodus from the evangelical church. Don't know about the Catholic, but the evangelical church has lost members every year for the past 10 years.
Catholics have too. I mean, the Pew reports are saying the same thing.
Our membership has dropped. And the reason why is because we have married politics with our brand of religion, and 88% of evangelicals, how they voted the past election. And so for us, we're like, man, that's not all of us. Right. This is not what we stand for. This is not who we are. This is not what we believe. We're not thirsty for power. We serve a different kingdom. We pledge our allegiance not to a cloth. We don't sing. If you want to kneel about a song of singing about bombs bursting on people, you can go ahead and do that. That's just an idol to us anyway. And so, you say that in our churches and people leave, man. I mean, that's, how dare you mess with our, and that's just how it was. They just married with politics, and we became looked at as and no one wants to go to church with oppressors. Nobody does,
Well, I think one of the problems we get into is that we don't, and I'll play the foil, I'll play the devil's advocate, and we get so involved in our party lines and our rhetoric that sometimes we don't really listen to what the other side is saying. And so a point of that would be that the pro-lifers point is, what it really boils down to is a discussion on when is the creation of life, when is life, when is this a life, and when does that individual have life. And we haven't even discussed that yet. And since we haven't discussed that, that means that we're not really listening to pro-lifers. We're not understanding the viewpoints. We're coming at it like, oh, they're just trying to oppress people. They're just trying to do this, when it's really that they see that as a life.
Yeah, you're right there. That's I agree. I was thinking that because it's not always about being on in the oppressor camp.
But when you do look at studies, and there was a study that came out a while back, it interviewed several evangelical pro-life people, and they asked them several questions, and it really came down to this: they don't want women to be sexually free.
Right.
That's what it came down to. Most of it didn't really come down to the baby being born or what was going to happen to it afterwards. Most of it came down to this: people are just too lazy to take a pill or put on a rubber, and they just want to do what they want to do and have no consequences, and that's what we believe. That's what we think people do this for, and that's what it was about. And I'm just like, so there needs to be a discussion.
Well, you can see that whenever people are I call myself pro-life, and you can see that whenever you're so verbal with the pro-birth and then have no care about the policies that protect that life after it's been born.
Right.
Yeah. That's just, if you are going to say that the pro-life community does a great job at caring about the children once they're born, that's just not true.
And that's a great point.
And sometimes too, so I think of myself as a good person, but we forget that not everybody has the same sense of morals as us. And so there's oftentimes that I'm in groups and I'll see somebody say something about maybe some group saying this. So there's so many people in this group saying these derogatory things, these evil things. I'm thinking to myself, there's not that much of that. And then I start looking around, I'm like, oh, there is a lot of that.
Yeah, right.
That is how other people think.
That happens to me too. I'll get into a conversation and someone, this happens on social media all the time, where I'm in a conversation within an allies thread, and we're having a conversation, and someone comes in and attacks you out of left field, and you're like, wow, you came in hot, and hot and ugly, And so I usually have to make a choice. Do I want to have a verbal war with this person and get hot and ugly with them, or do I just go, I
always make the wrong choice.
I just need to turn them off. I have to do it all the time, and my thing lately has just been turn them off, because I go nowhere good if I stay hot.
I don't either. Yeah.
It will
but
get
I
very
still do
dark
it.
and vile, and just I get angry. I can feel it.
I used to stay silent. I used to listen to people say demeaning things towards women or towards minorities and think, man, I don't really want to tackle that. But since the Me Too movement, I've been really trying to say something, to tackle that, to fight that, because I think as an ally, we are more powerful than it's a bad way to put it. Sometimes we have a little bit more influence over our peers than the people who are being oppressed.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, that you should be aware of what your natural inclination is. So my natural inclination is not to be silent. It's always to give a rebuttal. And then I have to examine, where's that coming from and how is that helpful. So if your natural inclination is to be silent, maybe you should be pushed to be a little bit more loud. And if your natural inclination is to be loud, maybe push yourself to be a little bit more shutting up.
Yeah.
My dad actually went to school with David Duke at LSU.
Stop it.
Wow.
And he would tell me stories of being in the quad and seeing David Duke giving his speeches, and basically he would just spout his rhetoric and hate speech, and to the point where he would get a black guy to get up and swing at him. And then as that guy would swing at him, he'd say, well, this is my point. They're aggressive. This is kind of it. And I remember always thinking to myself, a white guy should have got up and swung at him. And it just has me think, because I work with trans clients, and a lot of times, they're on hormones, and as your hormones are changing, you're going to have different outbursts, and that's one of the things that I work with them on. You might have somebody who is having crying spells. They've never had crying spells before. They might have aggression, and they've never really had that aggression before, and so I've always thought to myself, like, if I was outside with them or something like that, and somebody came up and started spouting trans rhetoric, I'd always want to be like, no, you're good. Let me handle this.
The time in history that we live in right now is so unique. I was telling my wife last night, I said, we were just watching the news, I said, we are living in the most interesting time, because it seems like we went backwards a lot. But at the same time, I feel this sense of hope that maybe there's some sort of resistance or uprising or something. And I don't just mean politically, I just mean to a different way of seeing the world and seeing people. I feel like that's on the verge of happening. I feel like it's happening in certain circles of Christianity. I feel like it's happening in society, that we're learning to see just a different way to view the world. And I'm hopeful for my kids. I want that.
I want to feel hopeful too. I
read a story yesterday where a kid got in a fight at middle school, and two kids hit him, and he hit his head on the concrete and he died. And I'm just like, I can't live in this world. My kids. It's awful.
I know what you mean.
And I think the problem, I'm always going to go at politics. It's politics, because when you look at the studies, this is the safest time to be alive. Our life expectancy is longer than ever. The murder rate is completely down. This isn't just in America. Thanks to the Me Too movement, we're creating a world this is the safest time for women. And but when you turn on the news, you would not believe it. You would just think that we've descended into the dark ages and that everything is increasing, but the studies show that everything is decreasing, and this is the safest time to be alive.
I don't know why this comes to mind, but I'm going to trust it. Do you guys know Glennon Doyle?
Yes.
From Love Warrior. She wrote Love Warrior. She's my favorite writer of all time. She's married to Abby Wambach, the soccer... Okay.
I know Abby.
Well, they're married, and she wrote Love Warrior. And Glennon was telling the story about that she was teaching her children about the civil rights movement, and this is what happened, and blah blah blah, and explaining it to her children who are removed from it and don't know it outside of history. And her daughter said, "Well, Mommy, would we have marched with those people?" And she opened her mouth to say, "Yeah, of course we would have." And her son answered, "No, we're not marching now."
Wow.
That's some good stuff right there.
And she was a Christian speaker before she got divorced and then married and she got blackballed.
Another thing she says, which I'm going to share this too, I wanted to say this earlier, is she posts a lot on social media, on Instagram, about God, and she calls God with the feminine pronoun her, and people in the comments boxes are always like, why do you say God, God is a woman, why do you say God her? And she says, well, God is obviously not gendered because it's God, but I will continue to call God a her until people no longer ask me why.
Yeah.
No one questions.
There you go. Gets back to being called a feminist. You're going back to the original.
Because no one questions that we call God the Father and He.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had a conversation the other day with somebody, we're meandering into another direction, but somebody that listens to the show regularly, and they're a hard-boiled atheist, you know, and we were talking about something else, but it came up, and, you know, they were commenting on the show, and the person said, when I listen to your show, it reminds me where I live. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, the language y'all use, you know, like a lot of the guests talk about God and say he and him. And so it reminds me where I live. And I said, so you mean like the South? She's like, yeah, I know when I listen to the show, it reminds me, and I have a hard time with it. They were saying, I have a hard time with that language, you know, and then they even told me that they have a hard time with me. Not in a negative way. Right. They weren't they were being honest. And they said, you know, I have a hard time with you because you'll have a conversation with somebody and you'll speak their language with them on the show. And you'll say he, and in the same language you're using. Then the next guest, you'll talk in another language. And I said, well, there again, we're getting back to the rule. My rule for the show is we got to get to the good. Yeah. What are you doing good for people? Tony, I mean, people are more important. The good we're doing in the world is more important. I said, so when I have a guest who comes on the show and they're speaking, you know, Bible Belt Christian language, they're calling God he, you know, he, him, his, Father. The minute that comes out of their mouth, if my first thing is to go, hey, we're not speaking the same language, let me tell you why I speak a different language, then we're going to get completely derailed and have a big theological conversation, talk about the history of the Bible and language and languages, and we completely get away, and there you go. Politics gets us in that space where we're bickering over this, and we're not even talking about what you came here for, which is how you're going into these trailer parks where people there's a high poverty level, and you're trying to help people get into programs so they can get off drugs. Yeah. We're not even talking about that anymore.
And you think about this isn't really hard to think through if you think through it. You know, when Jesus called God Father, he did that to indicate that he wasn't born like us. Right. That, you know, his mother was a virgin at the time, and that his literal father wasn't Joseph, it was the heavenly Father, you know, and so he naturally called him Father. But then Jesus turned around and said, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And spirits don't have genders like this. It's really hard to figure out. If you want to call him or her, if you want to call God, not him, if you want to call God or her, do that. You know, like God is a spirit. You know, he doesn't have a.
And if you're listening to, I just want to share this. If you're listening to this and it frustrates you that people call God or her, just examine that.
Yeah.
Well, examine it.
Well, even like my conversation with my friend who's an atheist, you know, we didn't fight. We talked for 2 hours.
I love that.
We didn't argue about any of that. We kept talking about good works and good people and what makes people, what motivates people. We got past that very quickly because my answer sufficed. My answer was, I'll speak the language. If I'm knowledgeable enough, I'm going to speak the language of the guest. Right. Because we can get into actionable things which are helping human beings. That's it. That's the whole point. That's where the rule has to be broad enough to cover a lot of ground. If I had a rule that said we're only going to speak this language here, you know, we can't even get to helping people now. We can't even do that.
This is kind of a weird one, but I promise it has a point. So one Thanksgiving, my whole family comes back in. There's a lot of us. My parents had 6 kids, and I think at this point I had been married. My brother had been married. He had some kids, and he went to the bathroom. I really had to go. About 15 minutes later, he came out. I noticed that he did not reach for the exhaust to turn it off because it was never turned on. And so as I went to the bathroom, I smelled poop. So I had to use the bathroom.
Where this is going. All right.
It's a very good point.
Got it.
And so I used the bathroom, smelling his poop, and then I got out. Of course, the exhaust was on when I did it, and so I turned it off. And I just said to him kind of casually, hey, use the exhaust next time you go in there. And he said, I don't have to. And I said, so why don't you have to? And he said, my poop doesn't stink. And so then he has a doctorate in political science, so that should kind of tell you what I was in store for. And we used to argue all the time. We shared a room, and so 48 hours we just argued about this poop. That it sunk. Obviously, I knew what you did in there, so it had to have done something. Crap. Yeah. And then at some point, and we'd probably been arguing for like 25, 26 years at this point. At some point, it just kind of hit me. if I can't convince this guy that his poop stinks, what am I ever going to convince him of?
Right.
And at that point, it really just shed this thing with me where I never argued with him again.
Yeah.
And to this day, anytime somebody starts talking to me, like if it's somebody getting mad because somebody called God or her, I'll just kind of think, if I can't convince this person their poop stinks, then there's something else going on there. I'll never be able to convince them anything about this gender thing with God.
Yeah.
So why am I even having a conversation about it?
Some people that you try to have a conversation with, you're disagreeing about the fundamental rules. And if you're disagreeing about the fundamental rules of the conversation, then the conversation will go nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I have to watch myself to make sure that when someone disagrees with me on what the rules are, that I don't automatically think my rules are right and their rules are wrong.
Right. Oh, that's for sure. I mean, I've experienced that doing this show several times where I go, I don't have to agree with them. I do think I try my best to find some kind of a common platform to walk on, though. Because if we can find a common platform, even if we have even big theological or just nature of reality, differences. We're still on this planet together. We're still breathing the same air. We're still interacting with other people. I try to make that the platform most of the time. Now, do these other things come up? Absolutely. But that's the platform that this show tries to walk on is that we're stuck here together.
Yeah.
We're stuck here together. I mean, what are we going to do while we're here? What are we going to do while we're here? Yeah. That's just it seems so easy sitting here with you guys to say that out loud and go, oh, that makes sense.
Right.
And social media has changed the dynamic in society. I mean, you think about when Facebook came out and then the first smartphones and iPads came out where people could just do that all the time. Before you had to get on your laptop at home at the end of the day. But now it's while you're driving. And this is around 2007, so very quickly our society has changed. So now any opinion that anyone has can be discussed and just put out there.
Yeah.
And that has caused some division because before I wouldn't have known what you believed down the street. Even if you were my neighbor, I wouldn't have known what you thought about politics or anything, unless we discussed it. And if we did face to face, probably going to be friendly.
Yeah, right. That's right.
But the keyboard, man, is like, I can do this and get away with it.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And you think about the Twitter and like even the way 45 uses it.
Yeah. Well, it gives us an ability to prejudge a relationship. I actually talked about this with somebody. I said, there was a time when I would just meet people. And if it was pleasant, it was pleasant. And if we liked each other, we'd get to know each other more. And then we'd spend more time together. And then if something came out after we spent some time together and we weren't in alignment, maybe because we had so many other things that connected us, those things were okay. It was okay that my buddy didn't exactly think like I had found there was an endearment to them at that point. So we were willing to move forward even in spite of that stuff. Now, somebody reaches out to you, their name's Amanda. I'm using this example, and I go, well, who is this? Immediately you go, who is this person? There's a guy and a girl in the picture. And I'm only using it as an example to illustrate what we do now.
It's my point. I mean,
it breaks our, we go,
for me, it's not funny. It's to keep a neutral,
Yeah.
So
and so when
you're interested in who I am and not my gender or my...
Right. Yeah. And so you start to research people and you see, well, they believe this and they believe that. I mean, I've said that on the show many times that there are people that I get these social friend requests, and go, did they go look at anything I write? Because we're in like a huge polarity difference. I mean, they're not going to like me. I go, they're not going to like me. Yeah. We're going to probably fight. Yeah. We're really not going to get along.
Right.
And then, sure enough, we don't.
Right.
And I'm like, you can see I have now, and it's just changed. You're right. It just changed the way we
work with that same person every day for years and have a wonderful. You know what I mean? It's just because the boxes we check are opposite of the boxes someone else checks, and our boxes are up front.
Right. It's funny how true that is because I've got family. And I'm going to have to be careful how I tell this story because this isn't, it's got hot words in it. But a family member that I'd known, I liked them, I liked being around them for years. And then one day we're all in a truck together, we're helping somebody move. And they rolled down the window because they were mad at the person across the street. And they were like, get a move on. And they said a derogatory racial word to this person, just screamed it out the window. And it was natural. Mm-hmm. And for me, it changed everything.
But I'm not racist. How could you say that
it
about
just
me?
hit me in the wrong place. And I still see that person all these years later, but I just go, this is in you, and it's hard for me. It changed. It was like that was their social media feed. And if I had had that piece of information, I wonder if I'd have had any of those other endearing qualities, would I have given them the opportunity? If that would have been the only thing I saw was that one racist comment written as a social post, I would have allowed those years of endearment. So now when I see the person, I'm still friendly with them. I go, they're like me. They have this flawed nature and this compulsion to do rotten things sometimes, just like I do, and say mean things sometimes and hateful things.
And I think sometimes we forget how powerful we are, though. So just like when I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to use the language they're using. And y'all have talked about that gravity that people have, that aura that they put out. And so a lot of times we don't want to tackle that issue. But a lot of times, even if we don't tackle it in a harsh way, even if you're like, that's not cool, man, just kind of a little bit like that, it really does shape people. So we really do have this calling where we need to at least put some sort of dismay out whenever that happens. And it might little by little chip away at it, but eventually he might start to question when he says something or his thoughts are.
Small seeds.
See, what I've seen happen with me is when I do that, and it's probably not that way with everybody, but what I've seen is it's like, oh, just don't talk like that around this person. They don't want to change. A lot of people don't want to change in the critical way. They just go, oh, when they're around, don't bring that, don't act like that, because they're going to say something about it. My son experiences that. I mean, he's very vocal, and he comes home with all these stories, and I'm like, man, that's got to be tough. He's like, yeah, because he will set, when somebody gets really adamant about supporting 45, he'll be like, why are you friends with me? He'll just say that, like, why do you even want to be around me? Because if you support him, you support this list of things, and I'm critically against those things on a core level.
And they affect me.
Yeah. So if you're supporting that, then you're, in his math, his equation, if you're supporting that, then you don't really want to be my friend. And he's like, takes it that far. And I told him, I said, that's going to be rough. That's going to be rough with that equation, because you're not going to have any room for change. You're not going to allow these endearments to build where you can show the person over time.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept, because you can be that, like from me, my perspective and who I am as a person, I want to reach as many people as I possibly can. Roger, my partner, he just wants to stay. He wants his bubble, and his way is his way. And same thing, like, I don't support that, so I can't support you, and that's okay. But me, I want to reach as many people as I can reach, so I will be a little bit, like people call it sugarcoating, or something like that. So, in that kind of a situation, it's nice to see people who stand up for what they believe in and stand in their honor, because then they can go home at night and say, this is who I am, and they know exactly who they are and what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing.
Yeah, we will always gravitate towards each other. And so if you take, trivialize it intentionally, if you take, like, I hate the Dallas Cowboys. Right, I'm going to say all kinds of horrible stuff about the Dallas Cowboys, but if I'm playing on a soccer team and all the guys there like the Dallas Cowboys, my rhetoric changes, right? It gets even, and it gets to the point to where I don't talk as bad, and it really does change.
That's right. Yeah, forever. Exactly. But if you were who you were, then you just wouldn't play soccer with that team.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to reach them, and that's just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And thank God there's people on both sides. Thank God there are people that are willing to stand in their honor and say that's not okay with me, and thank God there are people that soften themselves, because if there was just one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, and I always call myself a liaison. I'm a liaison of life. So, I've got Roger here, and I've got somebody here, and I'm in the middle, and I can bridge this, and I can coach in a way. I can, Roger's had a lot of trouble speaking with his ex-wife, the mother of his children, for a long time. And I'm like, why don't you just say it like this? And he's like, well, because I don't mean that. Like, I know, but wouldn't you rather her come around to what you're, having to say? And now they have a, very friendly relationship. Yeah. Because you've got this liaison in the middle that can kind of coax from, I'm constantly saying, you need to say something to say somebody, we'll say it like this is the way they're going to, and then they're going to tell me, and then we can kind of keep this circle going.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too. I really am, and I'm also a believer of standing up. I just think everybody has a different threshold for what they care the most about, you know. And that's what I've told Jonah. I was like, you know, pick the things you really care about. Stand on the line when it's time to stand on the line, but be kind. It's the old Patrick Swayze. I'm about to get my boy in here. Roadhouse line, you know, be nice until it's time not to be nice. Keep being nice. Just keep trying. But there may come a time when you can't do that. And you have to be willing to.
I'm that way. I'm very low energy just with MS, and so I have to really protect myself from stress and confrontation. Stresses me out.
Your adrenal,
And so I just try to do things by just taking action. You know, if there's a need, we're going to feed. You know, if I need to, I'm going to go vote. That kind of stuff. But my wife is a lot smarter than me, and I had no delusions about that, you know. And so she's the type that she will speak up, and she can do it in a way to where she can get on, you know, she can cause people to think. If I do it, I'm just going to make you mad, you know. So I always tell myself, Tony, don't say everything you think, because it's just going to, you know, until you can think through it. And I do that in relationships too, even, you know, don't say everything you think.
Yeah. What's your wife's number?
Her Enneagram,
Her Enneagram, she was telling me...
thought you were trying to pick her up.
I thought so. I was like, podcast? Wow.
337. She talked about being like a 3 and a 4.
Man, because I have friends with her on Facebook.
Yeah,
and I like her.
Oh yeah. They don't ask for phone numbers anymore. My little 6-year-old went up to a lifeguard over the summer and said, "Hey, this is my Roblox name." So I guess I guess that's the new.
What is a Roblox?
Dude, that is the new thing with these kids.
Is Roblox an app?
It's a game.
A game.
It's a huge, robust game. Yeah, for sure.
Jackie was the number that was between, like.
I like that.
She moves with her heart. She's in between her head and her heart, but she moves a lot with her heart. Whatever one that is, you know, she moves with her heart, and I move with my head. You know, like and as a counselor, I found that beneficial because, you know, I'll talk to people who want to commit suicide. So if I always moved with my heart, I would just be a wreck. You know? But that's how we kind of balance each other out. But she is a lot smarter than me.
And so what is that called? The number stuff?
The
Enneagram. ENNEAGRAM.
Those tests are pretty robust.
At first I thought it was anagram, and I was going to try and I was like, oh, you have to spell your name out and write different things, and then they put it in that way.
I really thought Tony was about to give some weird anagram about Tony Bork, and I was like, well, this is interesting.
Man, there's just questions. Questions you ask, and you rate yourself.
T is for...
It's going to be wonderful.
This is a great place for our final.
Oh, no.
Thought you were getting out. I think it actually is.
We all bow our heads like we're praying whenever
I just want to concentrate.
I'm always trying to get out of it. There's actually a video.
I'll be reading everything on there and not paying attention.
All right, here we go.
I think our social network, not real life social network, has a lot more to do with our mental well-being than we realize. We want to pretend like we're these independent lone wolves, and if we're having an issue, that's kind of us and we have to fix it, or if we're doing great, that's us and we did it on our own. But we're really collectivistic creatures, and so I think that's one of the problems that we get into sometimes, is we don't focus on our social situation enough. We hang out with friends that we shouldn't be hanging out with, or we don't go out and make new friends as our old friends start to move away, and we see our circle kind of start to shrink and decline. And so a lot of times when I'm working with my clients, I am trying to make them build their base up.
Yeah. Okay, I like this.
Man, that was good.
Yeah.
That's been such a huge change in my personal life. Just recently, like the last 2 or 3 years, I have a small group of 5 women, and Stacy's one of them, like we were talking before we started, of women that are just good. And they build me up, and we build each other up. There is not even a hint of gossip. There is only love, acceptance, honesty, and beauty. And I did not even know that was a thing that was like possible, you know? And that's so important. And changes how you feel about yourself, changes how you act towards others, changes how you even see the world, knowing that there are that the people you surround yourself with give you the energy that you go out into the world and then give that energy off to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I mean, of not going out and making new friendships. You know, like when old friends pass away. when the old friends passed away. Well, maybe. I mean, maybe that does happen. You know. Or even, I mean, for me, I listened to your statement, and it reminded me of two things. It reminded me of when I would get in a collection of people. I can use religion as that. I mean, when I would get into a religion, and then all of a sudden the little group would form, or I'd go on a retreat, and there'd be a real tight knit, and then that thing starts to break away as they do. You know, we're all going to talk to each other every day forever, and then it's like, oh, the impact of the retreat starts to wear off, and then people go back to their normal patterns in life, and that becomes less and less important the further away from it you get. You do get that feeling of like, well, and I think I see some people chasing that. It's like, I need to go back on another thing, and then they get another group, and they get hit real hard because they need that. For me, I've always been, maybe it's unhealthy too, like afraid of that, because I go, well, I've been through this and it tends to separate again, and I don't really need to go through that cycle again. So I won't even go do it because I've been there, and I'm like, I don't want to test this again and keep testing this.
Do you not think though that you come across like this, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that you will take a step forward in a relationship and just really be brave in that step forward, and then whenever the other person meets you, they don't honor your truth and your honesty, and so you kind of have like a protective...
I think that's probably accurate. I don't know if I'd say maybe it's a protection. I've never put that word on it. I've always been more like a flow of energy is the way I would consider it. And it's kind of like what I described. I call it alchemy a lot of times. It's like, okay, how can if I'm going to point this energy into this thing, I want to see it transform into something. There needs to be some sort of evolution from where I'm at to where this thing is going to be. And so when I get that energy pointed into a person, and I go, hey, this is just an output of energy, and there's no transformation, and there's no transmutation, there's nothing being born, and I can just sense it. I maybe in the past I would have stayed in that longer. Right. Now I just go, hey, look, I need to take this energy and point it and put it into another device. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm using the right language, but for me that seems to be my mode. Is like when this energy's in here and it's starting to flourish, then I sense, okay, this is a good connection. The channels have lined up, the gates are open, things are being born. But I can tell pretty quickly, for me anyway, like, hey, this energy's not good. I mean, I've even experienced that with the church.
Right, of course.
I mean, it's exactly what I experienced. It was like, hey, here's some love. I'm ready to love. Right. It's hot and on fire. I mean, right. My heart's been crucified. I got the holes from the thorns. I'm ready for the big cross and the flame on top. I want to be the other side of the Sacred Heart. You know, I want to be on fire and glow. Let's glow. Let's glow. And then you get in there and like, we don't do that here. We don't glow here.
We don't do that here.
No, man. In fact, you got here's a book and come to class.
Here's how you glow.
And also, if you want some more love, then you gotta have to get somebody to sign on this, and we're gonna stamp. This turned into a bunch of contracts. Right. And then also some of these contracts are to keep other people out who ain't done what you did. And I was like, well, that ain't glowing, man. Right. I'm not on fire. And my energy went, okay, I got to take this glow and stick it in another thing. Yeah. Something with the shades up. That's how I am. I mean, I don't know. It's just how it is.
I've told you before, you got to make the thing. I've told you this before. I feel like you've tried putting your glow in places. I think stop putting your glow in places and look at you here.
Well, this is the thing. Here. I think what you're saying, I think you're sitting at the thing. This is the thing. And as long as this is glowing and it's good and people are getting something good from it, then I'll just keep dumping that in there.
Sounds very harassing, Kyle.
I'm going to just say, I'm ready to stick that glow right in there, bro.
I don't know about it.
I feel like I don't go very deep with people unless I really, really know them. And that may be a problem. I don't have any expectations, though, either. And I've learned that. I guess I've been a pastor for over 20 years. And so, you know, people will let you down if you're easily let down.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I really don't have any expectations. I don't really get let down by people a lot, even if they do some really horrible stuff, but I don't have a big circle, and I know that probably needs to change. But the position I'm in, either people are looking up to me or they need something.
Right.
And so a lot of the times I'm just like, my boys, my wife, leave us alone.
That's how I am too.
You said you don't get deep with people. Is it because you feel like it's not a safe space, or it's just not something that is natural for you?
I have to be really, really close to somebody, and I'm not a small talker.
Right.
I'm an introvert, so I'm deeply shy, and people scare me. But I think it's just the fear of, like, I really don't want to change your mind about nothing. Mm-hmm. I just want to love you and hang out with you. But if we get to this space where we're gonna have to start talking about deep stuff, and I know that I'm gonna like disagree with you, I have a hard time not going there, and so I'd rather just not. So I don't know. I don't know what that's
energetically draining.
Yeah,
I'd imagine being one of the head of the church. It's hard to like as a counselor. I can't be friends with my clients. Right. I can't divulge that kind of stuff with my clients, but it's very easy for me to clock out, go home, and have that there. But I'd imagine being the head of a church, that is kind of, that's your community.
Yeah.
But you do have to keep like a separation, and so it gets really weird. It's almost like you have to have a group outside of your church, and that's kind of weird to think about. So I imagine as a pastor, that's got to be really tough.
We do. We have a couple that we're friends with. I don't mean a couple of, they're a couple. It's Matt and Wayne, and we go take trips with them. Yeah, they're wonderful. And they make me feel safe, and I can be myself and everything. So we do have that, but it's not a very large.
But I don't think a sacred, I mean, I might be wrong, and I don't like to talk in extremes or whatever, but I don't think a sacred space of people that you surround yourself with that make you better can be big. Do you know what I mean? I don't even know that it can be a large group. Or I haven't seen it, at least. I haven't seen it be a large group. I've always seen those places, those spaces of people that are good and pushing you to be good and are safe for you are always smaller, I think.
I think sometimes we glorify relationships. I think, and it kind of guilts people sometimes. So, like, sometimes we glorify the connection between a mother and a baby, a newborn baby, and women will feel very guilty when they aren't born with this magical, sacred bond. Same thing with God. We glorify the bond a lot, and so whenever we're not having these visions and burning bushes in front of us, it's like, what is wrong with us? And I think the same thing happens with friendship, because we want that deep inner sacred connection, and really you're only going to have that with a few people in life, hopefully spouses and things like that. So most of your friends are going to be more superficial, and we tend to throw that away. We want to be like, oh, it's just superficial, oh, it's just this. But those are very important to us, because we really want to feel like we belong to the community. As human beings, we have this drive, this need for that, and or sometimes we don't. Sometimes we are counterculture, but even counterculture, we like to have our culture, right?
It's weird because my dad passed in February, and my mom's by herself now, and then 3 weeks later my wife's mom passed, and so her dad's by himself. And so Jackie and I have had conversations about what's it going to look like when that happens to me or her, and Jackie's like, well, whatever, if it's me first, just be happy. And I told her, I said, here's the deal. I said, I wouldn't feel any sense like I was betraying you or anything. I said, but you're just my person. And honestly, like if I hadn't have found her, like I'd be totally cool being by myself and just being a dad. Like I just don't have that need. I'm an isolated person since I was a little boy. I had an imaginary friend, and entertain myself, and my favorite person is me.
Right.
I don't ever need to counseling from myself. I don't drain myself. I just make myself laugh. I think I'm funny. Even if no one's around, I'm laughing at myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can relate to a lot of what you just said. I mean, I'm sitting there nodding my head, going, I have
Pee Wee Herman. I'm a loner in a
for sure. Relationship has been worse, and I don't. My wife's sitting in the back office. I mean, and I don't mean it like the way it's going to sound, but I'm just going to say it the way it's going to come out. Relationship has been worse for me than solitude, because I probably am not very good at it. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I don't think I'm very good at relationships. I think I'm good at being a nurturer as a father. I think I'm good at being a good listener. I think I'm good at acting and helping people, but I'm also better to heal from those things because they tax me. They take from me, so I need that isolation time. What I've found as I've gotten older and the world's gotten busier is that I have less and less and less of that, so I have become less healthy. That's just the truth. I probably am less mentally healthy and less whole as I get older because there are more and more and more relationships and complex things, and I think those things they don't add to me. They actually I feel they take from me. I know that's crazy.
That's why you don't do retreats, because you need to be
for
alone.
Me, my
to
retreat
recharge.
is solid.
That's how I am
alone.
too. Yeah.
I am the exact opposite.
Same.
They kind of
my boss is the opposite. She needs me, and I'm like, I need you.
Yeah. They tell you in counseling that you'll leave at the end of the day, and you might not want to talk to your family because you'll just be talking. I'm like, heck no. I think sometimes the danger we get into is that we think that there's something wrong with the other person because they're not like that. I might be like, well, Oran, there's got to be something really wrong with you. Right. You don't want to go out and hang out with people. But then you're like, well, Bruce, why do you have to be around people so much?
Right.
And but everybody is wired differently. You need different things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said about relationships and that if you comparatively, you're less healthy now than if you had just been alone. Because I am the exact opposite. If left to my to be alone, I am so naturally selfish that being in a relationship with my husband, who is like a much better person than I am, everyone that knows us both would agree, being in a relationship with him has kind of like pushed me to be aware of all the ways that I'm jacked up, and he's been like almost a example for me, and I know that if I was a 32-year-old me right now without 5 kids, without my husband, I would be vastly different.
Yeah. I'd probably be to the war. I'm imagining this. It's maybe not true, but just the truth. My deep truth is that to the world, I probably wouldn't look very well off because they would go, this guy's got no house. He doesn't own a car. He's wandering from place to place. He settles for a little while, maybe works an odd job and then takes off again. What the heck? That's not good. That's probably what I would be more like. And I do love people. That's the other thing that I say that a lot, but I've found in myself that I actually do love people quite a lot. And I think that maybe is why I end up retreating so much, is because I think I love them in an almost unnatural human way, very supernatural way. That sounds really crazy, but
you have a heavy dose of empathy too.
It's so painful. I mean, Michelle knows. I tell her all the time, like, we can go. I have a hard time going out to eat, and if I see people, and there's somebody like the other day, I went to Panera Bread, and I stopped for lunch on a Thursday because that's my path on Thursdays. I go by there, and I was going to stop and get a sandwich. I couldn't. I left so heavy. There was a family there. Their child was sick, and they were all caring for it, and you could just see that there was just a lot of pain and heaviness, and it just wouldn't leave me.
Yeah.
It just stuck around, and I go, this is this place that I've been in since I was a kid, and so I'm afraid of being around too many people in intimate ways, because then it gets into that pain, and I carry it home. I carry it like in this space that we were talking about earlier, and it just lingers. It lingers, and so when I'm wandering as in this mystical way, that doesn't happen as much. I can get in and get out and wander in this other version of myself that doesn't exist, honestly.
I've asked myself too, if I was wired for certain types of relationships, because my first marriage ended it was over 7 years ago, and we were very different, and so, but one of the things is speed and pace of life, and mine's very slow and strategic. When you have MS, you have to be, because you're living in mud, and so you have to be. But and my wife Jackie knows that when we found each other, I couldn't stop myself from falling in love with her. And we both tried, and people said, man, you got to wake up every day and just love his work. You got to, and her and I talked, like, we've never really experienced that. Like we were like, man, we don't want to do this, but God, I can't help it. I'm just in love with you. Yeah. And so it works. She's my person and it works. But like if something was to happen when we're older and she goes before I do, I would miss her so much. Yeah. But it wouldn't be to the point to where I would want to replace her.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly.
Because I'm the type who can live with nostalgia and and I love it, and I live with memories, and I think about my dad every evening on my back porch watching the birds eat, because that's what my dad did, and I shed tears, but none of that bothers me. I feel it, you know.
Yeah, no, I understand, man. Yeah,
she makes it work for us. She's awesome, you know. But if it wasn't for her, I'd probably be a pastor and a dad, you know, and. That's it, you know. And
I've had that exact same experience with my first wife. It was just not, you know, it just didn't mix, and I just was like, well, she's from Venus and I'm from Mars. That must be what's going on here. And I didn't know any better, and it wasn't until I got in a relationship with my wife that I realized that's not the way it is. We are the same, and she has ankylosing spondylitis, and so a lot of times we are a little bit hampered by her diagnosis also. But yeah, I mean, it just works and it just fits, and everything just feels great. And if anything happened to her, I wouldn't be looking to replace anything. It really would.
So when you go from every weekend, we got to do this with these people, run, and then all of a sudden you're just like, man, I haven't even had time to watch Netflix, because that's what I love. You know, like I'm 43. I grew up in the 90s, man. We had nothing but movies. You know?
Man, I hear you.
But like Jackie, I'm like, well, you want to do something this weekend? She's like, yeah, I want to hang out with you and watch Netflix. I'm like, man, this is awesome.
See, that I get that. See, Michelle's a comfortable place like that for me. I mean, if I had to really just sum it up, the way that love works for me with Michelle is that it's the love of the most wonderful friend. I mean, that's just, it's comfortable. I don't have to prove myself to her. I don't have to explain a lot to her, and I don't ask her to explain anything either. If she wants to do, she does. If she wants to believe what she wants to believe, she does. We talk about those things. There's not a lot of judgment in there, and there's not a lot of pain. Yeah. For me anyway, and so it feels like a comfortable type of love. It's not like this eros.
It's not.
You know what I mean? It's not hot passion,
right.
Because that stuff for me has always been dangerous, and it flickers.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't like when things flicker like that.
Yeah.
That's like a good oiled, trimmed wick.
Just solid burn.
Some good light.
Patterns make relationships or they break them. You know, not promises, but patterns, and we have similar, so it's good.
Yes.
Hey, about your talk, do you ever watch Big Brother?
Like first 5 seasons, but were they on like 27 now?
Oh, they just finished. I thought that was an interesting human. Oh, it's awful. It was like an episode of Black Mirror. This last night's finale, but I found that a very interesting human experiment. For 3 months, no social media, no TV, just relationships.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And almost all of them, when they leave the house, was like, "This was amazing."
Really?
You know, they couldn't talk to anyone. They couldn't talk to their family, but they had 12 of each other.
Yeah.
Well, and we like to blame social media, but a lot of times we just isolate ourselves too. We get so worked up in what we do. Something weird about society is that, so this is a good thing, right? Women are working more than ever before, which is awesome. That's great. Men are spending more time with children than ever before, which is amazing and great. But men aren't working less, and women aren't having to care for the house less.
Right.
It's like we've just increased the workload.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but we
that's
never
true.
increased the free time. And I think that cuts down. And I think we like social media gets a lot of that. Well, okay, it's taken away from our personal relationships. I think it might be the way that society's going, where we're just stuck with so much work and time.
No, I think you're right about that. I mean, I think about that all the time, and I talk about it probably till people are sick of it. But I mean, the pace is just it's too much. I mean, I don't even want to pretend like it's not. It's just too much. It's too fast. It's too much, and it's not good for us.
And in the South, we got to work.
Yeah.
You know, son, if you don't have a hammer or a shovel in your hand 7 days a week, you're not a man, you know. And even God said, man, take a day where you don't do nothing.
Yes.
you know. But I heard something yesterday that we still make policies in this country based off of a poverty baseline that goes all the way back to the 50s of a single income household.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been updated. So we still base our poverty line from a 50 single. And so we base policies off of that, when in reality, probably today's poverty line's probably about $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not making any policies based off of that.
Yeah.
So because of that, society's just busy and trying to make it and trying to pay for the house. And, you know, when I get in my car, I want it to start. So every 3 years, I guess we're going to have to get another one, you know, and it's all that kind of stuff happens. And you when you're born, and you have to pay to live here. And then when you die, you have to pay to get buried here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot that you have to pay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. I think about this. I was talking about this a little bit in that category when Kevin Yaldis was on here, and we were trying to figure out,
like we're going to figure it out. But, we were talking about why the suicide rate is so much higher in Calcasieu Parish than everywhere else. And I mean, I've got so many thoughts about it. And you're in one of those territories, what you're talking about. I think, I know people who are, and then also it's disproportionately high, let me say this, in the server industry, waiters, service.
I didn't know any of that.
Veterinarians.
Yeah. And so you go, okay, why is it higher here? And then also, and then this is a new thing. And then why in the server category? And I mean, knowing someone close to me who is a server and lives here and who struggles with anxiety and depression, I go, I can tell you because I talked to this person. I know why it's higher, at least with that person, because it's hard. It is hard. They're already struggling. And they're being told, you need to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to pay your bills. You need to do this. And when you become a problem again, everybody looks down on you based on some dollar signs.
Right.
And then they're like, why am I here? I'm just serving for what? I serve what? What machine am I serving? I'm just a cog in this machine to do what? Breathe air. I hear these words.
Right.
To suck up
What's the
air,
whole point?
go buy some groceries, eat so I can go back to work and barely make enough money to do what? Sustain the machine that's destroying my happiness. And I go, dude, it's a disease. I mean, and we've got so many human beings trapped in that situation. I mean, it's horrible. It's despair.
In Denmark, they pay their restaurant servers $21 an hour. And the reason why, they asked the restaurant owners why, they said, well, if we don't, they'll have to depend on the government. And that's the sign of a sick society.
Yeah. Right.
So we pay our employees. And what do they make here? $3 plus tips?
Yeah.
And
still.
$21 an hour for, that's...
And whether you believe in evolution or creationism, this is not what we are designed for. Creationism, we aren't designed for this world. God did not intend us to live in a world like this. And if you're looking at evolution, I mean, we're thousands, hundreds at least, but thousands of years from having brains evolved enough to handle electricity and electronics and the stuff that we assault it with. And we're really designed to live a life where you do some work in the fields, you talk to a few people, you go back home, you have this relaxing time, and we're just not living the life that we're designed for.
You plant some tomatoes and then you eat them.
That's it.
That's what it was about.
I think often, like, I always look around at people and I'm like, how come no one else is having a hard time? Like, when my kids were in school, like, no other parents seemed to be struggling to turn in the papers and buy the different color shirts. And I just could not understand, why is no one else struggling? What's wrong with me that I'm having a hard time remembering this and pick up and drop off, and like, it's so hard. And I finally realized, and it's something I have to remind myself often, it's not hard because you're doing anything wrong. Like, it's just this hard. Like, that's it. It's just this hard.
Yeah. I mean, I know just from, we talk about this, Michelle and I, a lot because we work together. And so we can, to some degree, bend and flex when there's a crisis or there's an emergency or where there's a kid has an odd need in the middle of the day. So we can go, well, how can we coordinate, shift some schedules, move some things around? That's a great luxury. And that's what we call it, a luxury, because other people don't have it. And I started thinking, I was like, that actually screwed up.
Yeah.
What I'd rather be able to say is go, it's just okay for anybody to do this, and it's not going to break the machine.
Yes.
To just go, hey, my kid has a need. Can I just leave without feeling stressed that you're going to be mad and I'm going to lose my job to go do the loving thing because I'm a parent? Wouldn't it be great to live in a society that was like that? But we don't. It isn't really like that. You find employers like that in pockets or individualized, but you don't see that as a blanket idea. The machine is, and the rule, again, I mean, bringing it back to, if you want to call it that, the rule is more important than people.
Right.
Rule is more important than people.
Yeah.
I mean, people can do that. They just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Roger is a perfect example of that. He's lost a ton of jobs because of that same exact reason.
Well, that's what I was going to say next, is I've had to do, I've done the same thing. I went, if you're going to make me choose between you and my kid, I'm going to have to quit.
Yeah.
And not everybody, though, can do that.
They can, right?
Well, they can. They have the choice, but then there's a chain reaction of things.
It's unprogramming what you've been programmed to believe, and that's the problem. The problem is not the machine. The machine is not broken. The problem is the programming that you've been accustomed to all this time, and then deprogramming from that.
See, I have a friend. Well, I'm going to say a friend. I'll call him a friend. I have a friend who's done that. Said, I'm not going to work. My spouse isn't going to work, and it's all going to be good, and it's good because I'm breaking the machine. But then you sit and talk to him and say, well, how are you breaking the machine? Because I'm not taking part. I'm choosing my family over being in the workforce. I could spend all my time with my family. Okay, they got no garden. They got no chickens. They don't live on a ranch. They're not farming.
Right.
They live by me in the same place I do, and they're not drinking ditch water. Okay, so what's happening there is they are living off of the machine. And so I go, so you're saying you're breaking the machine and you're making a choice, but your choice is you're just utilizing the machine in a different way.
Which is still another program. Because we've always been, if you don't make your job your hobby, I've got 2 jobs. They're both my hobbies. I love to clean and I love to dance, and I always wanted to be a teacher, and now I get to do that. That's just a product of I've created my life around my hobby. And you can't deprogram yourself from one program and then expect to not have to deprogram it from another. Right. It's just a domino that you have to continuously do that.
I think too, though, it's important to think about that, like, we're coming from a place of privilege when we're having this conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's important to, I think, remember that, like, it's easy for us to say, like, we're not going to take part in the machine or whatever, but some people literally don't have that.
That's right.
That choice.
Yeah, you have to do something. You don't have to do anything, but you have to make your work play. And if you don't make your work play, then it'll always be, I have to do this instead of I get to do this. Yeah. And I know I have my privileges. I'm a lady. I am white. Those are my privileges. Other than that, Roger and I make $40,000 a year combined. We don't live above our means, and we love what we do for a living. And anybody, if you deprogram yourself, can do that.
It sounds peaceful.
Well, and
it is very peaceful. I spend every Wednesday and every Saturday with the most amazing 3-year-old boy, undivided attention. Yesterday we made pizzas together at 2:00 in the afternoon. Who gets to do that?
Yeah.
People that want to.
And coming from the place of privilege, it's my parents didn't put any money into my college, but they did give me a place to live while I was there. They did push me towards college, and when I made the decision that I needed to change directions, thankfully I had a professor that told me to get my degree in music education and then go back and get a master's in psychology, and that way I was able to work as a band director to pay my way through grad school, whereas my wife didn't have that same luxury. She came from a family in poverty, and so when school got kind of tough for her and she needed to change directions, she didn't have that platform. She wasn't able to make that change, and she dropped out. And when we got married, I was, because I was at a point where I was established, it made it easier for her to go back to college. But it really is that we were talking earlier about how, kids, maybe they could change directions whenever they're older, but whenever you don't have that base, that support there, that privilege, it's really hard to do that. You're just kind of stuck going in that one direction.
The village is so important. I talked about that on my episode. One of my questions was, what's the one thing you can do for your children? Create a village, because you can't do it all. You can't be that person for everybody. You have to have your village so that they can pick up the slack for you, so that your kids can. I had the opportunity to go to college and do anything I wanted to do, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't even do that. My 2 favorite jobs I've ever had is a nurse's aide at a nursing home and a server. Those are my 2 favorite jobs I've ever had, because I just wasn't programmed for that. But, your village is everything for the kids.
Gets back to what you said in that statement. How important is the...
It's not about the close-knit people, because those are the people that build you up. It's about creating, it's about filling the gaps. Right. It's about filling the holes.
And going back to something Diana said, is that all of our emotions have a purpose. It has a reason that it's there. And sadness, that's one that we neglect. The movie Inside Out kind of really hits home, that it's whenever we show sadness that we're able to get that support from our community, that it is there to show the rest of this community that something is wrong, we're vulnerable, we need help. But what would happen if Diana just broke down and started crying and saying, this is hard? A lot of people look at it and say, just get up.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Right. No, we're lack compassion. And to me is different than empathy, because people say, oh, I'm empathetic. To me, I do think I have a real hard time with definitions, and people really have to break things down. Somebody said something about you can't succeed unless you fail, and I was like, I don't think I've ever failed a day in my life. What are you talking? I don't agree with that. And they said, no, failure just means that things didn't come out the way you expected them to. I was like, oh, okay, I fail all the time, But what empathy to me is sometimes when people say they're empathetic, they're misguided in that definition, and it really is a form of narcissism. Not necessarily. Most people who know truly that they're being empathetic, when you can feel that inside, but sometimes it's mistaken for it's narcissistic, but compassion, on the other hand, just doesn't necessarily mean that I have to feel what you're feeling. It just means I can just sit here with you and not say anything at all.
Yeah.
Because it is hard. Being a parent must be the hardest job in the world. I have no kids, but I know that's got to be the hardest job.
It's tough. I mean, it's a joy too. I mean, It's tough and it's a joy. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about you as you were talking about making choices. I mean, like, you homeschool.
Yeah.
And that was a choice.
That was a choice purely because I kept looking around at everybody and saying, how come everybody else is not having trouble?
Well, good for you.
So I'm having trouble, so we're going to stay home and we're going to have a slower pace. We're not going to have to wake up at a certain time. And it has been... And I wasn't excited about it, I'm going to be honest with you, because I was 5 kids, a lot of kids, every day, never a break. But because I was having such a hard time doing what everyone else seemed to be doing without any problem, it has been the biggest blessing. And it's easier, this is 100% true, it is easier for me to homeschool and be with my children 24/7 than it was for me to put my kids in traditional school.
Yeah.
So don't say, oh, she homeschools and,
right.
Superwoman or whatever. I'm picking the easier route for my family. And thank God the easier route for my family is the better route for my family, because I would probably still choose the easier route for a bit if it wasn't the better route for my family. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do.
And there is no right route. There's a better route for each person's family. Right.
This has been really great. I love how each one of y'all's statements generated these circular conversations.
Well, and to do my political campaign if I ever ran, something she said was, kids should never have to wake up before the sun is up. That is just everything I have
just
ever learned from psychology and biology is you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And like the parents are telling me, we have to wake them up at 5 o'clock or 5:30 to get them on the bus at 6:30. And it's like, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
A friend of mine teaches English in China and dance too.
Damien.
Yeah, Damien. He's awesome. But he said the one thing I realized is over there in China, they let the kids be kids.
Yeah. There's 2 hours of exercise before class even starts.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Fun exercise.
Let them be kids.
Movement.
Wow.
And we're sitting here by the time they're 9 years old being like, you better get your stuff together. You have to go to college. And
it's true.
No, I mean, as of right now, I have a teacher who's trying to get one of my 7-year-olds on ADHD medicine. Right. It's like making really great grades, not being sent down to the office, but he wiggles a little bit. It's like, okay, awesome.
Kids need to move. I tell my dancers that all the time. One of my first opening speeches to them is, how many of you had to miss recess today because you didn't behave? Well, all their hands go up. Don't make this 45 minutes because it's a lady and a gentleman that you have to actually touch. Don't make this 45 minutes as miserable as you have to spend your recess. Yeah. Let's have some fun and move around. Get some of that energy out.
Yeah. No,
that's what we're designed for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's healthier. I mean, I have friends that I went to high school with that I didn't see for 20-something years. And then they call me and they're like, hey, can I come have a meeting at your office with you? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, I just had this idea, that I've always wanted to do this, and I was wondering if you can help me with my brand. And I'm like, yeah. And they'll come in and tell me these ideas that they've had, and you what you discover is this was their natural path. Mm-hmm. This is the thing that they were geared to do. It's what they were made to do. But what they did was, they were like, well, go get an instrumentation or engineering degree and plug into one of the plants out here. Right. So that way you can get married, have a house, live in a nice neighborhood, get a car, get the bills, get the boat, get the vacation, and get in that cycle.
Die and pay $25 to be buried.
Yeah, and they're miserable. I'll tell you, like privately, some of them said, I'm just so unhappy. I've been doing this so long and this isn't what I want to do, but I can't quite unplug because I've got all this stuff I'm trying to sustain, but I really want to do this. This is my idea. And you can see their face light up. The whole body language changes. And I'm like, man, how many of us do this?
My natural path was to be a tuba player in Tony's punk band. That's definitely let's do it. Yeah.
I do see people like, when they hit their 40s and 50s kind of coming back to that and saying, man, I'm tired of this rat race.
Thank goodness.
I'm going to do something on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a YouTuber.
Mm-hmm. And I look at, God, boy, I can really get off in the weeds, but like I see like all these things like job fairs and stuff, and I look to see who's there, and a lot of times I don't see anything that's in any kind of creative industry or any kind of fluid industry or anything that humanities and stuff like that. It's all industry and economy driven, and we celebrate these things. You'll be like, love, blah, 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 share, and oh my God, great. And you go, yeah, it is good that you give someone a means to provide for their family. But there's the underbelly of all of that. It's like plug in, keep that thing going. And then, that's the very thing that I honestly think is what's keeping our suicide rate so high. I really, really do.
It's going to be
I think there's an unhappiness factor that's just
I'm going to get those numbers from you after all this.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Shoot them to me.
Yeah.
I'm a big, I don't know if there's any scientific or statistical research, but I am a big, I believe that us here in the South, our suicide rate is higher because of the chemicals that these plants produce.
I wouldn't discount that. Yeah.
And it's got to play a role.
Water vapor. It's just water vapor.
I mean, well, I've lived here all my life, and I lived less than half a mile from Westlake. So,
I've had a cough for about the past 2 months. This never happened to me in my life before. I've noticed that women in my life, it seems like almost every woman that I have in my life has some sort of issue with either endometriosis or some sort of autoimmune or inflammatory thing. It just makes me wonder, are those rates higher than the rest of the country?
If y'all aren't following this page, I would suggest it. General Russell Honore?
No.
Yes.
He came down here during Hurricane Rita. He was the general that basically was in charge of the military when they went into New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. Okay. He was all over the news. Well, then he came to Lake Charles shortly after that. He's a retired Army general, and he started something called the Green Army, and he lives in Louisiana. And, dude, he fights and digs into environmental law, justice, you name it. It's really worth following because you can get information. He talks about health, Cancer Alley, all of this stuff. He is out there fighting to really draw attention to things that are going on, like backdoor things where they said, oh, it's going to be great. We're going to put this new factory, this new plant here, and you come to find out it's just some, Chinese corporation that that the city council has kind of backdoored in to get a bunch of money, but they have all these different regulations for them. It's really all kinds of great info.
MS is an autoimmune disorder, and it started in my gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, is there something going on with those rates? I think Indorama, they put out the thing about how Indorama is putting out 100 times more emissions than they're supposed to. And what's going to happen? They're going to get a fine. Is that fine going to go to the area? No. The fine, I'm sure, is going to go to the government at some point. But I feel like they're going to find some link to all of those things that's happening with the illnesses and...
you don't have to be too smart to link it all together. No. Even the meth, that runs pretty rampant in sulfur is, in the situations that I've had to help somebody quote unquote, I'm not helping anybody, but first thing we do is a heavy metal detox, just to kind of flush. But then of course any kind of detox brings about other depressive type of states. So it's like you can do something, but you always have to constantly be supporting the thing that you're doing, and it doesn't take rocket science to realize that there's a link.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. You can get really into a larger conversation, even about climate change deniers. You're going, come on, it's kind of obvious. That we affect the environment. We do.
How would we?
Yeah, I kind of got into it with somebody about it, and I was like, look, I just got to simplify it. For me, humans affect the environment. I can tell you they do because the road just got widened out where I live, and a bunch of trees got cut down. It's as simple as that. Take the small things, and compound them, and there you go. It's just a bunch of feedback loops and will just keep progressively worse.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that people don't see that if you take a plastic bottle and throw it on the ground and have 8 billion people do that day in and day out, eventually you're going to have a bunch of plastic bottles on the ground. It's going to cover things up. And it's like, how are we not getting this? I don't understand why we're not.
Simple stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I know it.
This episode's Fishing for Goodies fishbowl sponsor is Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center in Sulphur, Louisiana. I don't know what you look for when you travel, but one of the things I look for when I'm putting together my itinerary is a unique museum or gallery in the city I'm traveling to. I do this almost every time I go to a new city, but if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of not always doing that very thing right here at home in Sulphur, Louisiana. That's really a shame, because we have one of the most interesting, historically relevant, and culturally rich corners in any city in the country about 2 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. I'm talking about the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center. Have you ever really thought about why our city is named Sulphur? They've got a permanent exhibit on the history of the sulfur industry that answers that simple question and more. You really get a full scope of just how important the sulfur mining industry was to the development of Southwest Louisiana and the impact it had on the rest of the world. Yes, the rest of the world. On the same property, right next door to the museum, is the Henning Cultural Center, presenting some of the most interesting, modern, and culturally relevant local art shows I've ever seen. My dear friend Tom Trahan and the Brimstone Historical Society have really worked hard to give us this treasure, and it's a multifaceted jewel that I plan to take advantage of more often. You don't have to wonder what their hours are, or how to get there, or what shows are coming up. Just go to brimstonemuseum.org like I did, and subscribe to their mailing list right there on the homepage. That's brimstonemuseum.org. Tom will make sure you start getting the announcements for each and every new show at the gallery. But you don't have to wait for the mail to arrive to enjoy this historical local treasure. You don't have to be guilty, like me, of overlooking a local wonder that conveniently sits next to the Grove, one of the most beautiful walking parks in Southwest Louisiana. Drop in and say hi to Tom for me. Tour the museum and center, and make sure to tell Tom that you heard about Brimstone Museum on Find the Good News. Now, let's take that dive in the fishbowl.
Wow. Okay, so that was interesting. That's interesting where we land. But, you know, there is one last part of the show. It's the end of every show. It's the fishbowl. And since there were more people here, we usually only do 3 questions, and there's more of us. So what I decided to do on this episode is, I have never done it. I'm actually going to draw the questions out of the fishbowl. So I'm going to draw them, and we'll ask, and everybody can just chime in.
We all need a movement break right now.
This is it. It's almost over. I'm going to go deep, though. Nobody ever goes, like, really deep.
I did.
You did. You went in there. Okay, let's see what we got.
That's a silly question.
So question 1, have you ever had a health scare? That's never been drawn before. Well, Tony, you've been talking about your health.
Yeah.
You got a constant health scare in your life.
I woke up one morning, couldn't see out of my left eye. Went to the optometrist. He said, go get an MRI. They said there's scars all over your brain.
Wow.
A year later, I was in the hospital for 8 days.
Wow.
Now I'm good.
How far after whenever you woke up with that vision loss did you get diagnosed?
Let me see. I gave it about a week or so because I thought I'd injured my back and I was on some prescription strength ibuprofen. And so I thought maybe something's going on with some of this medicine. And I just need to get it out of my system. 'Cause I don't like pain medication. It makes me feel weird and keeps me up, so I can't sleep on it. So I would just take ibuprofen. But I thought maybe something's going on. So I got off everything, and it still went that way. And probably 3 months later, I was diagnosed. Yeah, I'd given it a while. Then we went to see the optometrist. Then I finally got in to get an MRI with a neurologist, and that's when they. But then they had to do a spinal tap, so it was about 3 months. Yeah, it was awful.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I've never dealt with anything like that. How about anybody else? Nobody? No health scares?
Scariest thing that's ever happened to me is probably, I don't know, 18 years ago when I got rid of health insurance.
That's a health scare.
That was scary for a second because I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have health insurance.
I know. That's an interesting thing to talk about.
Things
sometimes
fine.
I wonder, because there was a lot of years where I didn't have it and couldn't afford it. And, you go, I mean, it wasn't horrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but there is that fear. Like, it's a fear.
Well, you gotta get. I don't have any fears of being. I'm. There's like an ongoing joke. Like if there's a curb, I like to jump down, but I'm always like, oh, Roger's like, this one might be too high. You got to be careful.
Right,
can't be breaking those feet. So
that's funny.
You can't be scared of these things. Of course, along with that, comes responsibility. I don't have kids, which I've chosen not to have, not because I don't want a little baby to raise and cuddle, because I'm not in the position that I would need to be in to provide for a child.
I understand that. I mean, it's wise, actually.
Quintuple of children. But that wasn't me going through the process. That would have been my wife at the time, and I definitely had fear for her and for the babies, and but I think she was going. Well, definitely she was going through the physical a part of it and all that stuff. So
yeah. What about you, Diane?
No.
Fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, me too. I don't think of anything for me. The closest thing I can think of would be when Michelle was pregnant with Eben. She had a fibroid tumor on the in their womb.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and so they you have to do all these tests and imaging and all this stuff. I mean, it was just such a grueling ordeal, driving out of town back and forth, and ended up they're going to do this robotic removal thing, and it was Da Vinci, I think is what it was called, and so the whole process was just crazy. But then they get in there and they can't do it because it's too close to Eben. So it's like, well, we have to leave it, and so now it's a waiting game of what we hope is going to happen is he's going to get bigger, and then he'll start pulling the nutrients from the fibroid, and it'll shrink. And so it was like this huge gamble thing and just a waiting game. And eventually it all worked out fine. I mean, obviously he's alive and healthy, but it was scary. I mean, the whole process, it was a little bit nerve-wracking and worrisome, not just for him, but for her too.
Yeah. In the spirit of honesty, I guess I should share that I have a thyroid disorder that makes my eyebrows fall out, so my eyebrows are fake. So if you ever see my eyebrows and think they look beautiful, they're fake.
Those are fake?
Fake eyebrows.
I couldn't tell
There's
from here.
There's a few hairs that, I build off of, but
So your eyebrows fall out?
Couldn't tell.
My eyebrows
didn't
fall
even know.
out.
Corner.
I just thought you trimmed them up and plucked them up real good.
No, I'm eyebrow bald.
Do you have like I don't know anything about putting eyebrows on. Is it like a guide or a template? Like,
no,
what do
I
you
use
do?
it's a whole thing. I use a fake mascara, and I get my whole forehead black, and then I take a Q-tip and clean up in the shape of an eyebrow.
How interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Eyebrows are big
now.
Eyebrows are important now. So if you don't have eyebrows...
work on my head.
Mine's the opposite. I just got to get rid of the unibrow every week or so.
They'll pluck it, or
so
what?
I look like the drummer for REM if I didn't. No, I just gotta shave.
Just shave it.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to question 2. That's wild stuff. I'm just going to go for another piece of paper. Let's see what's in here. Wow, this is harder than it seems. You're like clinking.
Exactly.
I've never
Yeah,
done
you're
this
learning.
before.
Now you know what we go through.
Yeah.
Ooh. Should parenting classes be mandatory for new parents?
No. The end.
No.
Because somebody has to teach that parenting class, and then whoever's teaching the parenting class, they should be offered, and if someone would like to take part,
I think they should be optional.
Mandatory.
I hate that word. That's what I checked out. The word
Rebels.
mandatory.
Yeah,
What's funny is I actually taught parenting classes
Was it mandatory?
before I had children.
Oh.
And now that I've had children, and I'd actually be really good at it, I haven't taught. So
Well, because everyone's an expert until you have kids, and you're like, oh, I didn't know what this was like.
You want to decrease my odds of showing up to something?
But mandatory.
Make it mandatory.
Yeah,
Golly,
we used to
man.
pass out a paper. My boss, she's like that's the type of person she is, mandatory and blah, blah, blah. If you sign this, we make our kids sign contracts. Finally, I convinced her. I'm like, can we just call them something different? She's like, how about a memorandum of understanding? I was like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, same thing. Like in the letter, it's like, these are mandatory. mandatory. And when I said, this is a commitment. When you sign this paper, you're making a commitment.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell you that you have to do something.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
hopefully for the sake of your team, you're making a commitment. It's just words.
A memorandum of understanding.
Right?
Well, yeah, for sure.
I love that.
For divorces, they now have this really beautiful thing called mediation, where instead of having to go to court and go in front of the judge and get lawyers, because just like politics, lawyers run everything, and it's you go to a counselor, or it can be a lawyer, and they help you agree on issues. And if you can agree on all the issues, and there's a little bit of anger, there's a little bit of resentment, but usually they'll take the people and say, look, this is what, if you go in front of a judge, this is probably what's going to happen. And once they tell them that, it can be resolved quickly. Well, this is a beautiful thing. It's a good thing. And so a couple of years ago, Coxsackie Parish made it mandatory that all couples go to mediation. And as a trained mediator, that is an awful thing, because once you start telling people you're forced to go to mediation, and then the lawyers, of course, tell the people you just have to go, this to be mandatory, do not agree on anything. They come in and the lawyers have told them don't agree on anything. And so
it makes it so terrible.
I just kind of sit there for 2 hours. I guess I get paid for 2 hours of sitting there. But
I had this interesting, it's interesting you bring that up, because I was thinking about divorce and marriage, because we say you're signing this contract, death do you part, and it'll, then you're divorced, and obviously you've parted. But I went through mediation when I got divorced. Well, let me explain. What I went through was I went to mediation, but the other person didn't come because it wasn't mandatory. And the way that ends up working out, if the other person doesn't come because it's not mandatory, you're just left to sit there and wait it out. I mean, and just they mark present, and they're like absent for the other person. So when you do go to court, believe it or not, the judge goes, well, you didn't go to mediation. That didn't look too great. And so it sort of begins to lean, It was interesting. I thought mediation was going to be good, though. I really did. I mean,
it is
seemed
a good
like
thing
it was going to be
make it mandatory.
And I've had times where I've even had the couples that didn't want to agree on anything, and after 2 hours, I've actually made them kind of agree on it. And the next thing I know, the next day, the lawyer's sending something back saying, well, we've decided to disagree with it now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would have loved to have went through that process. I always wonder back what it would have been like. Would things have been better? Would have been more peaceful.
Family court generates so much money.
My first husband and I used the same lawyers, so we went in there with a paper saying this is what we got. And that was amazing. The quickest $6,000 he probably ever made.
This is unrelated, but I was born a journalist. Like, I'm a journalist at heart, and so one of my things that I'm holding myself back on since I've met you is taking you out to dinner and having a glass of wine and hearing, because Michelle has such a close relationship with your kids, hearing that whole story, because I'm a nosy journalist by nature.
You're just curious. You want to hear
I want to know the whole story. But do you see how much I've held myself back and haven't
I didn't know you wanted to know that.
I want to know all the things.
I'll tell you anything you want to know.
I'm so curious about people. Like, I want to know people's stories so bad.
Who podcasts the podcaster? I mean, we need to have a
round
where the four of us question Oran.
Oh my gosh, that would be. We almost did that. Diana was going to take. We were going to do a show takeover,
which now would be perfect. But back then, the baby was still little, and she's still breastfeeding, and
we can still do it.
We should do it.
Yeah, because we're going to make it like a whole thing. Like, we were going to listen to it and go, wait, what's going on? Somebody else has this show. She was going to do the intro and everything.
Let's do it.
Let's make it happen.
The baby's old enough to be left.
She said when she came in, she goes, I was going to interview you. I was going to remember that? You were like,
that's
gung-ho.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm not that interesting.
Whatever.
Just as
Everybody's
interesting as anybody else. Last one, guys. Fishbowl. Oh, I love this. What a great question to end the show on.
That's the one I was rooting for.
No. I wrote this question.
Okay.
This was one of the first questions I was in here.
All right.
How has goodness manifested in your life in creative ways?
Somebody had this question the other day.
Read it again.
How has goodness manifested in your life in creative ways? And just as I wrote the question, my thoughts on it, what my real question is goodness manifests all the time in small ways, but have there been any ways in your life where you've just went, wow, I didn't see this coming? Not just as a surprise, like a gift, but something that just snuck up on you. And you went, wow, this is a good thing and I didn't expect it to be. Wow, look at this.
I mean, I think just the way my life is. And so I have quintuplet children that I split with my ex-wife, and then I have a 4-year-old daughter that with my wife. And, so I tend to work, I have 3 different jobs. And as you can imagine, having that many children is a huge undertaking, and my wife also having ankylosing spondylitis. I think the things, if you would have asked me back whenever I was in my 20s what I would want to do, it'd be travel. I want to see the world. I want to be out with my friends. I want to do all this stuff. Even if you ask me now, it's going to be the same thing. I want to take my wife. I want to travel. I want to see the world. I want to do all this stuff. And I'm not doing any of those things. The bank account, as she's going to school, our debt keeps adding up until she graduates, and all that stuff's happening. Yet I am the happiest I've ever been. And so I guess the unexpected would be that if I'm looking at all the stats, I should be depressed and I should be feeling sorry for myself. But when you have that person and then that purpose, and my kids are awesome, and it just makes everything feel good.
Yeah, man, I love that. That's beautiful, actually, Bruce.
My wife Jackie, her and her ex-husband's relationship has been a source of goodness. It's very odd. They should write a book. It's very, very civil. He comes over. We'll have dinner together.
That's beautiful.
We'll go to Disney every year together with him. We'll go to concerts, basketball games, take the kids stuff. And he's just a good friend to me, and to her. And if he's going out on a date and wants some advice, he'll call her and say, it's cool. It's very just unfamiliar, but it's just been a source of really...
That's beautiful.
Man, that is beautiful. I can't relate to that. Yeah. That's really beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we'll go to Disney before Christmas in a month or so, and we'll all go together and hang out.
Wow.
That's how it should be.
That sounds like an alien planet to me. Yeah. No, I'm serious. I mean, I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, they had too much history to have a future, and they knew it, and so they weren't mad at nobody. They were just friends and had a kid together, and were like, man, we're going to do this great, and they did.
Wow, man.
He's cool.
That sounds I can't even comprehend that. I really can't. None of that. It's just not even close to the elements. And
to Jackie's credit, she was like, we're raising a child. We're not going to do this wrong.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't work, she's like, we're going to do this right.
Yeah.
Everyone involved is. And
they work together.
Yeah, they work together.
I'm very Team Jackie.
Yeah.
I am very Team Jackie.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah.
She loves you, by the way.
Oh, good. I love her back. I want her number after this is over. Your second question is harder for me to answer about what did I not see coming. So I don't have an answer for that one. But how has creativity manifested goodness in my life? I think one thing I learned recently from Elizabeth Gilbert, who was my second favorite author after Glennon Doyle, is that we were created, right, in the image of the Creator. And so we are all creative, whether... And so for some people, when you hear that sounds like you've been left out because you're not creative in a way that is really concrete. Like you don't play the guitar, you don't write, you don't sing, you don't act, whatever. But we are all creative in different not obvious ways. And so my creativity that has really manifested goodness for me is one that's a little bit more concrete in writing. I write. In order to process myself, but also because I write what I wish I would have read, what I don't see out there for people that I want to say so that other people read it and feel like they're in a safe space or, oh, me too. That's the only reason I write, other than because I have to get the thoughts out, is because for the one person that might read it and say, wow, I'm not alone, me too. And that has been very good in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
You don't know how goodness, that's it.
I feel like you're so creative just from knowing you for 5 seconds.
I don't know if I quite
Well, like how is goodness just manifested in your life in a way that maybe came at you sideways and it went, goodness sort of emerged out of this thing in a creative way that I just didn't understand. Maybe I didn't perceive it, but maybe that hasn't happened.
No, I don't. I've always been very, I try to stay very naive, and I try not to make any no expectations, no hopes, no dreams, goals, I guess, but I don't know. I don't really ever try to, mess with what's already in line to happen. So
just let it unfold.
As far as my job goes, I've got a very creative job. We've developed a program for, kids, and that works, and that's good. That's very creative, and it's definitely good. We reach thousands of kids, all over Southwest Louisiana, and that's good.
Yeah.
All the time parents come up and tell me, I had a parent the other day come up and tell me that she said, our kids from 5th grade are just different. She said, I went to the W.W. Lewis dance the other day, and she said, you can tell which elementary schools had dance sport and which ones didn't. She said, they're just different. She said, they don't dance the dances that you taught them, but they are not afraid as 6th graders to go up and ask someone to dance, and the way they present themselves and the way they walk onto the floor, so those are good things.
Yeah, no, they are good things.
It's like you yourself, the individual, are the creative goodness.
There you go.
That's right.
Yep.
There you go.
You're allowing yourself to be the creative goodness.
Yeah. I think for me, the answer kind of relates to something Diana said. We can label creativity in these high spaces, like, it's art, it's music. And for me, I didn't know I was going to draw, but as I was listening, I was like, what is it for me? And I think creatively, it's the use of death as a source of joy and understanding and learning, because I lost my father as well, as I've shared with Tony, and I talk about him on the show probably every episode. And I talk about some hard things, but it wasn't just my father's death. My whole life, every time I've been faced with depression or just heaviness that I didn't think I could overcome, it was always death was always the door. It was always the door to understanding myself. It was always the lens I could look at life at and find joy. If I didn't have the lens of death, I wouldn't see half of the joy I see. I wouldn't see even a fraction of it. When I go on these walks and there's street signs everywhere and it's not beautiful, but when I look down at my feet and I see a little tiny weird plant growing through a crack, and I can get down on my knees and get close and look at it, and I see all this beautiful order coming up through this hard concrete, that to me is death and life. And I can see the beauty in that small thing, because I know what I've seen what it's like without that, when there is no life, and then losing my dad, just as in that regard, that has painted everything, since he died. I've been able to look at our relationship with eyes that I didn't have before. I've been able to mourn deeper than I've ever mourned anything in my life. And that gets you into these trenches that you don't even know are in your heart. God, it's where all the lost things are. It's where the socks go, that's really what it was. And so that stuff is creatively, in a creative way, death has created eyes, that see things differently, and that's a good thing. It's helped me and hopefully helped other people have conversations I couldn't have had and connect with them in ways I couldn't have connected with them. So, yeah, I hope I didn't bring it down.
No.
Well, this has been really, really good.
Yeah.
There is one last little thing that we do on the show, if I can find it. It's something new-ish. We've done it for the last few episodes.
Oh.
And it's called Better You in a Box. And so it's nothing that we need to talk about necessarily. It's just something that we're going to pull out of here. And it's an encouragement, maybe to all of us and maybe to people listening. And it's a mystery. So if everybody just draw one and read what it says, it's maybe to shake us into doing something we hadn't done before.
How cool.
Your turn. Yeah, you go ahead.
Read it.
Call a family member and have a meaningful conversation. I think this is a good one. I have 5 brothers and sisters. We're close, but we're not close. We're all friends. We're all good. But 2 of my sisters went to Maryland. I have another brother that's in South Carolina, and then one in Georgia. And then my little brother still lives here. And he's getting married in New Orleans next month, and so we're all going to come and congregate together. But we need to talk more, and actual phone calls, and we need to Skype more and have the kids Skype, because I think the kids miss that connection. They have a few local cousins, but I don't think they get that there's all these actual cousins and aunts and uncles that are scattered throughout the thing. And so this is definitely something I want to do, except I think I actually would prefer to Skype.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I don't utilize Skype enough. Will you pass that to Tony? I don't utilize it to communicate enough.
Because you don't like cameras.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Got to see myself. I could just see it.
No beauty pageant. I always call it my board meeting in the mirror. With myself. I try not to do anything until I've had a board meeting.
Phone calls are so awkward for me. They're just like, so what did you eat today? Right? Yeah.
Ask a friend to assign you homework. Don't forget the due date.
Ooh.
Snap.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'll figure something out.
Yeah, you can frame that a lot of ways. Like, that's an interesting exercise. Like, go to somebody, like, it makes me think, okay, go to Michelle and go, Michelle, just give me something to do, like, even if it's a personal reflection or something, and tell me when you want to hear from me by. I could see that being very interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me something that you think I need to do or hear.
I think I would have to whip out a math book and really assign some.
Oh, like some actual.
That's who you don't ask right there.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, mine says, so obviously if you're waiting for a sign, this is your sign. Mine says, call someone today on the phone to just chit chat.
Oh.
So if you're waiting to not call, like, call somebody.
Yeah. Do you
if
do
you
that?
Think about them, reach out.
The universe wants you to call. Yeah, I actually did that the other day with my dad. My dad and I have an interesting relationship. Him and my mom are divorced now, but I called him the other day to chit chat, and it's like whenever we talk, I'm like, gosh, why did I wait so long to call you?
I have people I wish would call me to chit chat.
Yeah, call them.
And
they don't they don't want to. That's what I wish they had the feeling like they wanted to. There's a few people I wish would do that.
And a soapbox that I've been on lately is I'm a huge father's rights advocate, and by that I don't mean anything anti-feminist or moms. Definitely support moms, but definitely a huge advocate of fathers having equal rights and fathers really getting involved with their children. And one of the things that I really want to help guys out on is, don't do phone calls with your kids, because that's where it's like interrogating. It's like you're really like, hey, what'd you eat for lunch today? Do something that's a little bit more fun, whether it's if you have the capability of doing it, but maybe join them on a video game. Online. Now you're actually doing something with them, or Skype them, because even those little Skype, like on the phone, they have the little games where you can turn yourself into a dog and stuff. And that way you're doing something fun, and it sparks conversation. You actually get something more from it than just that painful phone conversation where it's like, and so it's definitely a sign, but also take the opportunity to tell people, do something fun with it. You probably find like a chess game or a checkers game online where you can play with each other and talk with each other.
Yeah, even like those little words with friends type games.
Make it something they look forward to. Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that. Huh. We have the technology. Let's use it the right way for something good. I like that.
Everybody's is different, I think.
Okay. Oh, go out and eat a meal by yourself. Stay present. No phone.
Oh, I would like to trade.
Have this one.
Man, I'll do that. I'll take that one too. Tony's like, hey man, I'm in.
That sounds like
great.
A nightmare.
This is actually a challenge for me because I'm so curious about people and their, whatever their situation. I just want to know everything that there is to know right then. So for me to sit at a restaurant with no phone, or like, I guess I could bring a book, but I have to have something to pretend like I'm doing. Because if not, I would just be like looking at whoever is having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I just want to, I'm just so interested, and I don't want to be a part of it. I just want to observe. I'm like big into body language and the way they move their head, their hands, their posture, their, alignment to one another, and the, their mouth movements and things like that. So I could do that, but To be continued on if they kick me out of the restaurant for being a creep.
See, when I go on my retreat up to Natchitoches every year, that's part of one of the things I make a point to do is there's a cafe on the corner at Church Street, and I go in there and I order a little meal and I get a cup of coffee. It's usually before lunch, like I guess 10:30, and I can do exactly that. I don't bring a book. I just sit in there and I drink my coffee and I eat my meal. And I don't have anything, and it's not awkward, and I think it's because of where that's at. People assume that you're just looking at the beautiful scene.
That's what I would need.
You know what I mean?
Good idea.
So you put yourself in a space where nobody. It's not awkward. They're like, oh, well, they're just looking at the
past.
scene.
And I have this just ability to, like, I'm a magnet. So when I make eye contact, even if they're not looking at me, when I look at someone, they automatically lock eyes with me, and then it's like, now we're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah.
But we don't have to, really.
Yeah.
I've had people follow me into coffee shop before because they thought either they knew me or because we had that lock, and it was like, a chemistry that happened in that moment. Like,
you must have something about you, because when I first got here, I knew that I didn't know you. But now that I'm sitting here watching you talk, I'm like, I feel like I know her. Like, not like, I feel like I know you, like, in a friendly way, although I do mean that. I mean, like, I feel like we've met before.
I'm a lot of people.
Like
I'm a lot of people. People tell me that all the time. Everywhere I go, somebody tells me that I look like somebody. Are you related to such and such?
Right.
Or, because I just have that familiar face and
a familiar energy.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, it is.
It is cool, but it's the same thing. Like, I'm not an extrovert, even though I play one on the internet. I'm not one. I'm an introvert, so I have to retreat to re-energize, and that can take days.
Right. I get that. Yeah.
But
right.
It is not. It's fun. I mean, it's fun.
No one ever is like, "Oh, you look familiar." I feel like I know not one person in my whole life ever.
Really?
Never. I have an angry energy, I guess. Not a familiar energy. He's nodding. Don't nod at my angry energy.
First part. As a band director, it's like, and being in a band, it's like you know everybody. There's like this huge community, and so it used to be like, "Hey, I think I know you," and it's like I marched in such and such time, and now that I'm a counselor, it's like, I can't just go to people and be like, hey, I think I know you, because now I have to keep the ethics in line and stuff. And so I see people that I think I recognize, but I'm like, oh, wait, I can't, not ask.
Yeah.
Where do I know you from?
Oh, you're right.
Oh, from counseling.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See, I never go up to people. I've seen you in Kroger before, and
You said, I saw you, but I didn't go talk to you.
But I didn't go talk to you, because I just, it's debilitating sometimes.
Well, and then if you're listening, this is a weird thing about, I was going to ask Tony this too, because you have a flock, so being a pastor of a flock, are you just friendly with everybody? You see them in the
I just smile if I'm out in public.
Yeah.
They're
Just
like,
a
hey,
gentle.
you gotta pretend like,
what's up?
You don't have like an intimate deep dive every time you run into them.
Can't do that.
Yeah. See, I think people who listen to this show, if they listen to this show, I talk so openly about so many things, like, and a lot of it's social anxiety. I've even worried, like, is that now people go, well, don't go talk to him because he's got social anxiety.
Well, for me, it is a little bit. Sometimes I try to hold back on, like, messages that I may send, because I don't want you to ever think that it's just like, oh God, it's just blah, 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 So sometimes I go periods without. That's why I put my messages on different places. Sometimes I may do it personally. Sometimes I may put it on the link. Sometimes,
so thoughtful. That is
because
very
I don't
thoughtful.
ever want to, like, junk anybody up. Well, I just have.
You know how it feels.
And I just don't need a response, and it feels like to me that you always feel like you have to respond.
Oh no,
not anymore.
Yeah.
But in
when
previous,
when
we first started, but I don't need a response. I just got to get it out.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when you do things, we have the agency side, and then we have like the podcast side. Well, a lot of people don't know anything about the agency side. They just know about the podcast. So I even had somebody here I interviewed today. They said, so what's the deal? Is this what you do? Like, that's all they knew. And so I said, oh no, gosh, I have a whole nother like thing. It's like the main thing. This is the side hustle. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, I had a total misconception, and I go, well, so that just shows you what we know.
Yeah.
I mean, like someone, who recommended you for the show. And so I went, Okay, I had never seen you, didn't know anything about you, but I'd heard all this stuff. When I met you, it was so different than what my brain had like structured. This different. You were.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard of Water's Edge forever, so I never would have pictured that this is what the head of Water's Edge looks like. Right. As a punk growing up myself, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty awesome. I see Diana all the time at church, and so we always are walking by each other with a bunch of kids, and then Amanda.
I heard.
Yeah, right. I feel like we've made friends on Facebook, so it's kind of like, you know, through the newsy kind of.
Yeah, that little group has been good, I think. I mean, it lets people know, hey, this is just people who've been on the show. We can kind of all in the same pool together, you know. Yeah, and then Carrie, you know, a lot of people who are listening may have noticed Carrie went quiet. she had to sneak out the door. We mentioned she had a previous engagement.
Yeah,
but.
And with Carrie, I need to be referring so many people to her, and I'd never heard of what she did. So now I'm like taking notes. I'm like, man, I need to call back these old clients and send them her way, and all the new ones that are coming in. So.
Yeah, she's doing a great thing with social media with kids. I mean, it's just wonderful. So many people are doing so many great things, and I love how you guys all ended up at the table together. I mean, Tony, you may not know, but Diana,
I was a super fan.
Yeah, you were on the show, and we posted it, and I think it was like a month or so after it aired, I got an alert that someone had posted the link to your episode.
I think you talked to Jackie about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was kind of cool, and I was like, wow. And then for her to come on and then y'all all end up together.
That episode was like, I shared it a lot because that episode I felt like was probably what started me on the whole unboxing God thing.
Cool.
You know?
Wow.
That's cool.
That is neat.
Yeah.
Well, that's why this is so cool, because even like Carrie, I went to it was big, the fundraiser that she had.
Oh,
and it was so awesome to be the person that knew what her organization was.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, I don't even know what Truth, Facts, and Lies is. And I was like, oh, well, let me tell you. And I will link you to a podcast that will explain in detail.
My wife and I were like, well, maybe it's a murder mystery podcast. Like, maybe let's look it up. And I would say, I looked it up, and I was like, wow, that's really amazing. And
that's so funny. Truth, Facts, and Lies, dude.
The titles.
Yeah, and in counseling, those are issues that, I mean, I have parents, I have single moms bring kids in, and they'll bring this boy in. They'll be like, well, he's doing fine. Just need somebody to give him the talk. It's like,
okay.
Oh, that's what
Here's a program.
Okay.
Wow, man, I never even considered that.
The talk.
Oh, wow.
But hey, for that mom, that's actually a brilliant idea.
It is brilliant. I tell the parents in our closer dance group, our academy, what we call our academy, I tell them, those parents on a personal level all the time, please talk to your children about sex.
Oh, yes.
Because I will if you don't. And if you don't want me to be the one that has that conversation, then you need to, because they're coming into an age now where, you know, some of the dances that we do are a little bit more intimate in the way that they move, and they need to be able to understand the difference, you know, and their hormonally.
Discernment for sure.
Yeah, their hormones are running rampant right now, and we don't. We try not to encourage, you know, cross dating.
That's interesting. Okay.
And it's just, it all ties in together, and like what she does and brings awareness, that's so needed. And I always tell them, I will have the talk with your child. I have no problem with that. So if it's too uncomfortable for you, you can allow me to do it. I will teach your child how to drive. I've let all the kids drive my vehicle, and you know, and I will talk to them about
math
kids.
Problem as their homework.
It's no longer the talk; it's now the weekly segment. I mean, that's really how it should be.
It really should be. Yeah, I can remember, but my dad came and tried to have the talk with me because I painted my fingernails blue.
Girl.
And then he came into my room one night and he was like, you know.
That's the opening.
I knew nothing. It's amazing that I didn't have 6 kids way back before. I mean, I knew nothing. Yeah.
Real quick, I just got to share this, then we can be done, because I have to share this because it's hilarious. When I was my dad's in OBGYN, and when I was in 3rd grade, I went to my parents and asked them what sex was, because I kept hearing that someone at school said sex was a boy pees in a cup and a girl drinks it. And my mom was like, no, you're too young to know. So I was like, well, that's for sure what it is. She just doesn't want me to know.
Right?
So for years, I thought that's what sex was. Please cut that out.
Wow. Do you really want to cut it out?
No. I said cut it out if if it's too much.
Oh, no, it's not too much.
That's what Diana thought in 3rd grade.
Oh, my gosh. Well, that's a great place to end.
There you go.
Oh, my gosh. I do remember my dad trying to give me the talk, and I got super nervous and ran out of the house and went to the bus. I don't want to talk about this. It was very uncomfortable.
I already knew it when my dad tried to talk to me. Most kids do.
Yeah. It's like, I don't need you to tell me all this stuff.
Unless you're Diana and you want answers, and you get none. Only urine.
The fact that she was hiding it made it more, okay, I guessed it.
Yeah.
That's right. God, that's interesting. I am not going to name this episode that, just so you know. Believe it or not, I have already named this episode.
And what is it?
The Right Round Table.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. We kind of have an 80s theme going with this show, and I'll always love that song. You spin me right round, baby.
Can you play that? Well,
can I play it?
With a record?
Yeah. I wish I could.
Audio?
They'd probably sue me.
You just have to say it at the top. I don't own the rights to this music.
This is the perfect time for our punk band.
Let's sing it.
Make something like it.
I used to do it like the tuba. I got it. Yeah, you guys bring it on.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much. It was a fun way to celebrate the year, and just thanks for coming in and making it work right here.
Congratulations.
A year.
That's crazy.
I can't even imagine what next year's going to look like. It's so wild. Awesome. It was so much better than I ever would have expected.
So the time that you have your anniversary means that it's always going to be automatic.
It'll be automatic. That's very good. You got some good puns, man.
I was saving that one. I was waiting for the opportunity.
God, so automatic.
Automatic.
Man, so many good titles I could have named this episode, and I already shot that one out.
Next year, 2020.
Yeah, this is great. Thank y'all so much for being good people, doing good works in whatever capacity.
Yeah, and we represent, we're so different, but we all represent someone else that's been on here and someone else that's outside there.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Thanks for listening to this special mixtape episode. If you want more conversations like this, consider supporting this podcast at patreon.com/FindTheGood.News. Share the episode on social media or leave a review. It helps more than I can express. I appreciate all of your support for pressing play, but most of all, for listening.